If everybody could have a seat, please. Are you rolling?
Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you all for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I know that weekends are few and far between for us in the swimming community. So we're going to try to make this as quick but as informative as possible. My name is Paige Sikkema. I can't believe I'm up here teaching this class, but I am the owner and head coach of North Channel Aquatics. I'm also the outgoing sanctions coordinator. I just handed that off after 3 years in that position. I think I've taken this certification, I don't know, 8 or 10 times. And I always sat there going, gosh, I hope I never have to get there and teach this. But here I am. And this is Henry Clark. Do you want to say something about yourself?
Hi.
Henry's on the board of directors. He coaches at an ag swim club, and he is a professor. What's your title? At Texas A&M as well. So, all right. In your stapled packet. So if you don't know, Darcy Barron, our executive director who helps put this all together, is actually out of the country. And so we've all been emailing and texting and such, trying to get this together. And so there are a few errors in your packet, and we've highlighted the changes in red. So first off, the wrong year is on your packet on your first slide.
Anything in red is correct.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Just to keep you on your toes.
I actually want to go on that side. Can I go on that side? Well, no, because my papers are here. So Henry and I both tried to proof this in between working our multiple other jobs. So we did the best we could. I'm at lunch duty because I teach school as well. I'm trying to read my slides and everything. So where's the clicker?
Right there.
Sorry. And how do I click it? Just this one right here? Okay. All right, so our agenda, we're going to go over some general information, why you're here, who is who is the meet director, and why do you get an annual certification. We're going to go over pre-meet planning, which includes facility planning, meet sanctions and meet announcements, the meet manager and team manager files, renting the Gulf equipment if you need it, inventorying your own meet operations equipment. We're going to go over the actual meet, and then we'll have Q&A. We're going to talk about, as part of the meet, receiving and processing entries, swimmer reconciliation, meet operations and procedures, results, and reports. I'm already awesome here. Did I do two of them? No, I didn't. Okay. All right. Why are you here? Hopefully, it is because you want to actually be a meet director, okay? It's actually not a bad job. Just have a lot of information that you need to know. Your team might have asked you, say, hey, we need a meet director because we have to have one on the meet invitation. Would you like to do this job? Or your team might require volunteer hours. I know my team does, and so I recruit parents every year to do this to help fulfill their volunteer obligation. You want to make sure that being a meet director is the right position for you to volunteer in, okay? All right. What is a meet director? A meet director shall be appointed by the meet host. Responsibilities include, but are not limited to, procuring awards, procuring the facility, obtaining your meet sanction, preparing the facility, arranging for personnel, equipment, and the supplies necessary to operate the meet, processing of meet entries, printing meet programs and heat sheets, arranging for publicity and media coverage, and preparing, distributing meet results, and filing the post-meet reports. You may have several people that help with these things. It doesn't have to be just one person. You might have a meet director committee. You might have several meet directors. So don't feel like that you have to do all of this yourself, although some of us are those type A people that have to do all this ourselves because we feel like that's the best way to get it done. All right, that's you.
So just
just to point out, to clarify, swim meets are successful when you prepare for them. So you can think about this, 99% of the success of your swim meet happens before the swim meet ever starts. So this is one of the reasons for this meet directors clinic, is to kind of get you to remember what it is, what it takes to run USA swimming meet. You know, high school meets have a different flavor to them. They're exactly the same format, the same kids. It's a small meet. If you're ever involved in running high school meets, you know it's a matter of really just showing up. The coaches usually take care of everything before you get there. But when you're a club and you're hosting a USA Swimming meet, USA Swimming requires you to follow certain rules and procedures. Gulf Swimming requires that you follow certain rules and procedures. And if they're not followed correctly, there's sometimes fines involved. But then your customers, who are your parents who come to have their kids swim in your meet, get discouraged and upset, and then you have to deal with that. So the real point of this meet director's clinic is to really help you to remember what it's like to run swim meet. Let's get our minds back on to running swim meets. Some of you are new, some of you are veterans. I've been running swim meets since 2000, okay? Over almost 20 years of swim meets. We at Texas A&M, we do championship style meets, we do open meets, we run high school meets, so we do all kinds of things. So I actually ran this clinic for
A long time.
yeah, 12 years, I think it was, maybe longer, from way back when. And remember that this clinic is not just about attending and getting your names on the sign-in sheet. It's about discussion. And so if there's something that you don't understand or need clarification on, or if I say something completely wrong, please point it out, and let's go over it and make sure that we know what the correct rules and procedures are, because they do change a little bit as we go through the years. So let's start talking about who is who. So meet director, meet referee, admin official, and safety marshal. Paige talked a little bit about the meet director and the responsibilities of the meet director. So the meet referee shall have full authority over all officials and shall assign and instruct them, shall enforce all applicable rules, whether they're USA Swimming or Gulf rules. Facility rules, that's through you, through your parents and your staff. If there are certain facility rules, you need to make sure that the referee understands what those are, so that the teams, when they come to swim at your facility, understand that. Shall decide all questions relating to the actual conduct of the meet. Can overrule any meet official on a point of interpretation. So typically what happens when a swimmer gets disqualified for, let's say, a stroke or turn infraction, it eventually makes it to the referee. The referee is the one who has the final authority on whether or not the swimmer gets disqualified. Okay? So if you ever have a coach who doesn't agree with the fine, or excuse me, the infraction and getting penalized and DQ'd, you have to go through the referee. The referee, if he's already decided it is a disqualification, there's no way to overturn it. Every now and then we'll get a parent who shows up with a video camera or whatever saying, hey, look, my kid did touch with two hands. It's right here on the video. We don't do video replay in USA Swimming except for at the highest level meets, all right, where they do have underwater video. But if the swimmer is finally DQ'd, the underwater video can't save them after the referee has actually DQ'd them. The referee has the final word on everything, okay? They need to, as I'm pointing out, meet referee and the meet director need to work together, okay? The referee has full authority, all right? And on the Gulf Swimming website, there's a list of officials at this link to help you try to find a referee. Referees are the ones that we have the least number of officials who are referees in the Gulf. They're the ones with the most experience. Sometimes they're the hardest to find. So as we go through this, we'll point out, well, this is when you should start to look for your referee for your meet. And like what we do, what a lot of clubs do, is we try to get our referees well in advance, maybe a year in advance. Maybe as soon as the meet ends, you say, hey, are you ready for this meet next year, right? And start to get thinking about getting the referee to be your referee for the following year. The other way that really helps is if you develop your own pool of officials on your team, right? And eventually get people to become referees, which is difficult because it takes lots of time and so on. So develop incentive programs in your own team to keep your own pool of officials, and then also develop referees. That will help you. Administrative referee was something, they're either called administrative referee or administrative official. There's a difference. The administrative referee is what we would use at like a sectional meet and higher. They are trained on the dry side and the wet side of officiating. The administrative official, which you need to have on every announcement, can be one of the parents on your team. So for an example, I'm not a wet side official, but I am a dry side official. I'm an administrative official. Okay? And the administrative officials have to go through a certain level of training in addition to meet director training, specifically to the proper procedures and rules for scoring the meet correctly. Okay? And if you have anyone in here, an admin official, yeah. So a lot of times meet directors are also admin officials. It works great on your team if you have people who do both. That way you can share responsibilities. One meet you're the meet referee or meet director. The next time around you're the admin official, and so on. The administrative official should be responsible or is responsible for the entry and registration process, clerk of course, the timing equipment coordinator, scoring personnel, and anything else that's as far as administration in terms of the scoring of the meet. Years and years ago, we did not have the requirement that administrative officials be part of your meet. And it was sort of relied on the fact that each LSC, if they sanctioned somebody's meet, knew that these people knew what they were doing, that they knew how to score a meet, they knew what the USA Swimming rules were, and they took it on faith that hosts knew what they were doing. Well, at some point along the way, that kind of got out of hand, and then USA Swimming made it a rule that you have to have a parent who's there at the meet at every session, and also on the announcement, who is trained in admin officially a meet to make sure that they understand the rules and can score the meet correctly. After all, the most important thing is that the kids get their times, right? You want to make sure that the kids swim legally, and get their times. So that's kind of basically what I just talked about here. Okay. And it's exactly what I talked about here. Okay. Now, the admin official may supervise any one of those positions. In other words, they can supervise the person who's doing, they can do all of these, or they can do certain parts of it, or they can just supervise. So it involves entries coming in, making sure that the kids who are coming into the meet are registered with USA Swimming correctly. That's working with the Gulf registrar. Making sure that the meet is seated correctly so that when the heat sheets do finally come out, that the heat and lane assignments are correct. Okay. Then, as the meet is progressing, checking the timing system to make sure that the backup times and the watch times that are coming in are in line with what you're seeing with their pad times. Okay, sometimes it's completely clear. You know, the meet manager software will show a color when there's a pad and buttons. So, just because there's color doesn't mean that the pad was wrong, right? The button could be wrong, right? The parent behind the starting block could have fallen asleep and when nobody else was looking, pushed the button after the kid had climbed out. And now you got a color on your screen, and so you just go to calculate. No, you got to make sure that whenever times are being corrected, that the admin official is involved and that the correct procedure is taken so that the kid gets the correct time. Okay. Then it's of course printing out the results, making sure that the results as they go out, whether they go to Meet Mobile or they're printed out in paper and hung on the wall, are correct. Making sure that the labels are created correctly for going on the awards. You know, that the scoring is put in correctly in terms of points. If you remember, when you start out a file in Meet Manager for the first time, it thinks it's scoring from 16th place down to, or 1st to 16th place. While we do open meets, we only score out to 8th place. So you want to make sure that the meet manager software is set up correctly and it's matching what the announcement is saying. Okay, so the admin official should be doing that, should understand, make sure that everything in the meet manager software is set up correctly so that the scoring is done correctly. Are we doing an open meet where we're not scoring any ages? Or are we doing an event where every age is in it and it's scored out 10 and under, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on? Okay, the time to figure that out is not after the event has been scored. Right? The admin official needs to be involved in all of that to make sure that the meet manager is set up correctly so that as the scoring is going, it's being scored correctly, everything is being posted correctly as well. Okay? And then at the end, when the meet is done, the final results file that goes to the Gulf and all of the teams needs to be done correctly in terms of reconning any swimmers who entered the meet on deck to make sure that their USA IDs are correct, that their club affiliations are correct, that their names and everything else are correct. Okay? So the admin official has a lot of responsibilities during the meet, which starts from the beginning all the way to the end. And just like the meet director, they can assign these things. You can have people who are working with you in the scoring table or doing the awards or helping you with entries as they're coming in or checking the recon of the athletes as they're going out. You can delegate. Okay? One thing that I do not recommend doing is working the meet manager computer, scoring the meet, and running the console, which is bringing the times in from the touchpads. Don't try to do that at the same time. Yeah, you could probably do it at a high school meet if you're really good, but at a USA swimming meet, you really need to have a parent who's sitting behind the console bringing in the times, and then you've got to have other parents who are working on the meet manager software and pulling in the times and scoring the meet. So how do we get these people? You can check Gulf Swimming. They're under meets. There's, of course, the link that shows all of the officials. As I mentioned before, you can recruit from your own team. This year, going into 2018, we only have 21 meet referees. Okay, and then this is under Gulf Swimming, you could look under officials and then rosters for phone numbers and email addresses. Try to contact people early. Let's see. Okay, so the rebate process. One of the things Gulf Swimming is growing rapidly. There are some LSCs who are kind of maintained a certain size, or they've only grown a little bit. Some have actually gone the wrong direction. They're shrinking in size. But Gulf Swimming is one that kind of keeps increasing in terms of the number of athletes, number of swimmers, which requires that we have more and more swim meets, right? Which requires that we have more and more officials. And so one of the things that we tried to do back starting in September last year was what's this rebate process. And that is, for most part, teams who are hosting their meet have enough officials that are working their own meet to kind of get the meet started and fill a large number of the positions. The hard part is to getting officials from other teams who are at your meet to become officials or to work as officials on the deck at your meet. So there's an initiative or an incentive here is that when your teams travel to other teams' meets, that if they work a session, you as the club get a $5 rebate for every person who works a single session or sessions at the meet. So if you have, let's say, one official and it's a 4-session meet and they work all 4 sessions, then that's $20. Okay, that at the end of the year, the Gulf will write you guys, your team, a check, and then you can use that money for whatever your team wants to use it for. Recruiting more officials, whatever. That's the whole idea. Yes?
I have a question. So I've done this before, but the second paragraph is a little misleading because it says the meet director fills out the report to include with their financials, but it's saying the meet referee needs to submit the report. So
Submit it to the meet director.
Yeah, the meet director.
Somebody to
yeah.
the meet director.
Because
Yes, I
remember,
agree.
it's the referee who knows who's working the meet.
I agree.
Right.
We've had that, so yeah.
Right. And so the referee needs to give you what team, what officials, how many they worked in each session, and so on. And then you'll fill out the form and send it in with the rest of your.
Yes.
Right. And so the form looks something like this, and then depending on how many sessions, you'll write, just tick marks or numbers, and then send this in with your post-meet reports.
Henry, remember, go back, it says this is only for Gulf-sponsored meets, or
Right.
open meets and championship meets. They're not for club-sponsored meets.
Right. For Gulf sponsored meets, not club sponsored meets. Here's the point. When you're doing your own club hosted meet, you're doing basically what's called an invitational. And so when you're bringing other teams in to swim in your meet, at the same time you should be asking those teams, do you have officials? We want you part of our invitational, but you got to bring officials. So you have the leverage to allow teams to come into your meet or not to come into your meet if you're doing an invitational, all right, whether or not they have officials. But when we do a Gulf meet, there are certain procedures and rules that we have in place that help hosts, because the technical planning committee is the ones who designs these meets, these Gulf meets. You all bid on them. And then if you win a Gulf meet, we're trying to help you run your meet as best as you can. So by offering this incentive for officials from other teams to come work your meets is an incentive to make sure that you guys have the right number of officials at your meets. Whether it's working, I hope, but it is in place, and so make sure that the teams who come with officials to work your Gulf-sponsored meets get their rebates back, so make sure you remember to fill out that form. And then at the end of the year, the treasurer or the registrar, the comptroller will fill out how many different meets and how many officials worked at each one of these meets, and then at the end there'll be a total. And I believe the checks went out because we got ours. So,
Yeah.
Are there any questions so far? Okay.
Okay, you get to see me for a little while. I have a huge chunk right now. All right, so the safety marshal. The safety marshal has to be a registered member of USA Swimming. They have to pass a background check. They have to take the athlete protection training, because these are personnel that are going to be on the deck active with the swimmers and parents, volunteers. And they need to read what the responsibilities of a safety marshal actually are. USA Swimming and Gulf Swimming rules and regulations require a safety marshal to be at least 21 years old. I know there have been some cases where we've had some safety marshals on deck that were 18 and 19 years old. They have to be 21. This needs to be the right person for this position. All of us have encountered safety marshals. We've all been on the deck either as coaches or parent volunteers, and you know when someone's a really good safety marshal. They are called upon to redirect parents and adults, and this is not the appropriate role for a young person. So that's why we ask that they be 21 years old, because they have to be that great people person to get those parents and other adults that are kind of where they're not supposed to be where they're supposed to be, and understand why. All right. I forget to have this clicker in my hand. All right, some things to ask yourself. Why are you doing this? Am I the right person for the job? What are my expectations from volunteering? What are the expectations of the swimmers that you're going to encounter, parents, coaches, officials, the facility owner, Gulf Swimming, and USA Swimming? So what are your expectations? I'm sorry, what are the expectations of those people? We hope you're doing this because you like children. Hope all of you like children. That you know volunteering is important, and that you believe in the sport of swimming and its long-term benefits. Will I make time, or do I actually have time to do this? It's not just the weekend of the meet that you're involved. It's a good 2 to 3, maybe even 8 week process if you're doing everything yourself. Am I in way over my head? Do I have too much on my plate to actually do this job the way it's supposed to be done? Am I organized? Am I a planner, or am I a procrastinator? Procrastinators usually don't do very good as meet directors. Am I good at management? Am I able to communicate by phone, email, or in person, mentor or teach? Do I have the patience to do that? Recruit and solicit help so that you don't have to do everything alone. And be friendly to everybody no matter what. That meet director needs to be the person that can smile at the parent that's very unhappy about whatever they're unhappy about. Okay? What are my weaknesses? Computers. A lot of people are not familiar with computers, especially as you start getting up in years. We're not used to technology like the younger people are. USA Swimming rules. Are you familiar with those? Facility management, preferably safety, the access points to your facility, and are people members or non-members? Can they be on deck? Can they not be on deck? Water and air quality. Water and air quality. And what are your expectations? What type of swimmers will your team be hosting meets for? All three of those, way different swim meets. Okay, if you've ever hosted a 10 and under or an 8 and under meet, way different group of people at your pool. Children don't know what they're doing. They're usually really new to the sport. Parents are very new to the sport and they want to not let go of their child's hand, and you have to assure them that they will be okay. And then you have a senior meet where there's hardly any parents there. So you're scrambling to find timers because they're not going to be in the stands. And the kids pretty much know what they're supposed to be doing. And then you have meets like open meets where you have meets of kids of all ages. So you have experienced, non-experienced, new, young, old, all types of parents and kids. And can you communicate this concept with the volunteers that you're working with and the facility management? Because your facility management is going to be way different for each of those meets. All right, swimmers. They expect a fun and competitive atmosphere, quality awards, clean facility, water and air quality and restrooms, a relaxing place to rest and socialize with their teammates, good food like your hospitality and what have you, your concessions, excuse me, prompt posting of results including splits and time standards, and awards ready to be picked up by the end of the meet. Those are what your swimmers expect. Parents. Parents expect a safe environment for their swimmers, good communication from start to finish, from the stuff on the website to announcing at the meet, signs at the meet programs, etc. Is the pool have easy access for swimmers? Do you have a clean facility, both for parents and swimmers? Good spectator viewing, drinks for lane timers, especially if it's hot and you're hosting an outdoor meet. Good food in the concession stand, and prompt posting of results. And then some things that coaches and officials expect from you. A well-organized event, good communication, again, all those same things that parents expect. A clean facility, safe environment, no slipping or tripping hazards, especially for your officials. Good and healthy hospitality. Let me tell you what, meets are graded on hospitalities. I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. And prompt posting of results and good air quality. As coaches that are at swim meets and in pools, what we feel like is 24/7, air quality is super important. We don't get to go outside and escape that like the swimmers and parents do at a lot of the meets. All right, so next, USA and Gulf Swimming. You're expected to follow USA Swimming and Gulf rules, especially with safety marshals and then members and non-members being on the pool deck. You need to educate your volunteers as to how the meet is going to run and what they are expected to do. Follow the sanctioned format of your announcement. That is really important. The announcement is gospel. Pretty much whatever it says in your meet announcement is how the meet is supposed to go. And you can't just go in and change things because of how things are going at your meet. So what's really important there is the bullet point under that is that the personnel and the meet on your meet announcement have to be present. Okay, they have to be. If you name one person as your meet referee, that meet referee has to be at every session of your swim meet. Same thing with the meet director. Everybody that's listed, if you list one on every one of those personnel slots, they have to be at the meet the entire time. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Submit the appropriate forms according to the timelines. So you have a timelines to submit sanction applications and meet announcements. You have a timeline to rent your equipment if you're going to use the Gulf equipment, and for posting pre-meet and post-meet reports and results. There's a timeline for all that. All right, why do we have annual certification? And steps for new meet directors, recertification, and meet sanctions. It's our next section. All right, Gulf Swimming requires that all meet directors understand the USA and swimming and Gulf Swimming rules concerning swim meet management and operation, and that they be certified annually based upon requirements set out by the Gulf Swimming TPC committee to ensure this knowledge and skill. So that is why you have to do this every year, to make sure that we know that you know what you're doing. All right, provides training of current rules and methods and procedures. The certification identifies and is an opportunity to discuss problems that have happened in the past, and we will be talking about some of those today. We'll discuss any new rules and procedures, and able to share ideas. So that's one thing that we want this to be interactive. When we start talking about some of these things about running swim meets, if you do something, if your team does something really well, then make sure you share that with us, because we're all looking for new ideas on how to make things better. So you need to attend the Gulf Swimming Meet Directors Clinic of approximately 3 hours. Pass an open book test. This is if you're a new meet director. You've never been a meet director before. So attend the clinic and pass a test with an 80% or higher. You have to have knowledge of the USA and Gulf Swimming rules, and the test is prepared by the TPC chairman. You have to be registered as a USA Swimming non-athlete member, excuse me. And you have to pass a background check, and you have to take that athlete protection training. Okay. If you are recertifying, you still need to attend the clinic, or you can watch a video of the clinic, which we are videoing right now. So if somebody's not here from your team that needs to be certified, they can watch this video, and then they have to take the test, right? Yes, sorry, I missed that part. Yes, they have to take the test if they're not here and pass it with 80%. And you still have to register, and you still have to have a background check, and you still have to have an athlete protection training as that expires. All those are 2 years. They last 2 years. Okay. All right. Meet sanctioning. In order to get a meet sanctioned, sorry, I wrote notes on here. I'm just making sure I don't skip my notes. Okay. In order to get a meet sanctioned, you have to have a certified meet director. So what happens when you send your meet announcement in, the sanction coordinator looks up the meet director's name on our master list and make sure that they are certified currently. And then they go and check all the APT and background check and stuff like that. The meet director has to be listed on the sanction application and on the meet announcement, and they have to be present at all sessions of the meet. Now, we mentioned before that you can have multiple meet directors. Henry, how many meet directors do you have at your meets normally? 3 or 4?
At least 4.
4. And he has them do different jobs, okay? I'm trying to think how the best way to put this. At any one time, at least one person that's listed on your meet announcement has to be present. Okay, so if I list 2 meet directors on my meet announcement, at least one of them has to be present at any one session during the meet. Both of them don't have to be present. At least one, though. Does that make sense? Okay. So meet directors that are on the sanction and on your announcement have to be registered. They have to be current on their background, and they have to be current on their athlete protection training, and they have to be a current meet director. at the time of the meet, the date of the meet, the last day of your meet. Okay, so let's say their APT expires on September 10th, and your meet is September 8th, 9th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. They will not be able to be on that meet announcement because they expire on the 10th and your meet runs to the 11th. Okay? And Gulf Swimming, our office maintains records of all of our certified meet directors. All right, is it still me?
Who do we contact
Yes.
for someone who needs to take the test? Who do they use?
Is that going to be Mike Yearwood?
Yes.
Yes, the TPC chairperson. So tpc@gulfswimming.org is the email address. It'll be on, it's in your packet. Okay. All right, so this is an example of a meet timeline. Now you have one, that was one of the separate pieces of paper that you were given. It doesn't look exactly like this, but this is a timeline for you as a meet director. So it tells you what you need to be doing at how many weeks out. Okay, so we're going to go over sections of this. All right, we're going to talk about, well, this really doesn't have, this is not the same. So annually, you need to inform your parents on your team of the dates of the meet that your team is going to host. We find that out in March. Okay, we have our meet bid meeting in March. So teams find out what meet they are hosting in March of every year. So, you know, when you start a new season, like around this time, you should let your parents know what the dates of your meets are, okay? And that everybody is expected to help. It takes a village, right? It takes all of us to run a successful meet. 3 months out, designate a meet director. Make sure you have a meet director. Secure the pool, sign your contract if you need to, and plan out in your facility how you're going to run that meet. And remember, it might be different for a little kid's meet than it is for a senior meet. All right. 10 weeks out, make sure that you have a meet referee and an AO, and then start soliciting ads and donations if you're a team that does that. Okay. That's the part we're going to go over right now. All right. Resources and getting help. So you're going to have notes from this clinic. And then there's a website there, usaswimming.org. It'll have the handbook, the standards, and it'll have your report of occurrence. Report of occurrence is very important. If you have any kind of accident or incident at your swim meet, you are required to fill out a report of occurrence. It's a super simple online form, usaswimming.org/ROO. You pull it up. Whomever, meet director, lifeguard, whoever's doing first aid, your volunteer coordinator can go in there and fill that out. And it asks all kinds of information about what happened. Okay?
Should it be meet director or the safety marshal?
Yeah, or safety marshal, I'm sorry, safety marshal. You can go to the Gulf Swimming website. The Gulf Swimming website has the meet schedule, the meet formats. It has all about our awards. You have a handbook. All your paperwork is on there. You can find that. Safety information is on the Gulf Swimming website, and how to rent golf equipment and all of our policies and everything. So lots of great resources on there. And our Gulf Swimming website has become very user-friendly. Much easier to find things on there now. I can't say the same for USA Swimming. I think that new website is a little more difficult to use. All right, so your volunteers, we've all gone over your meet referee, your officials, and your meet director. We've gone over safety marshal. These are some other ones. You need an entry chairperson. That could be somebody besides the meet director. Most of the time it is the meet director. Clerk, of course, could be the meet director, could be your AO. Okay. You need a console timing operator. Again, like Henry said, you really don't want that to be your AO. You want that to be somebody totally separate. I actually have an assistant timing operator. I have 2 people that sit there. It's nice to have a second set of eyes to help look for pad touches and misses. A computer operator, so that's the person that's going to be pulling in your results from the timing console. Timing judges, does anybody use timing judges? I don't even know what that is.
Well,
is
that's
that old school?
typically-
I don't
That's
know.
that's somebody who's like the AO,
Okay.
working at the scoring tables and, look at the colors from meet manager.
We have a results person, and they work with the AO on the results. We have 2 people
Comes
sitting
into
there.
play when coaches have feel like there's a discrepancy, I think, is usually what happens.
They usually go to your AO for
Yeah.
that.
Between that and the referee.
Yeah. You need runners. So you have runners that are taking, they're posting heat and lane assignments. You have runners that are posting results. You have a runner that's picking up lane timer sheets. I said posting results, yes. So, I mean, wherever you're having paper that's having to be transferred from here to there, it's helpful to have runners. Sometimes we use our high school kids for that if they're not swimming at the meet. It's a great volunteer position for them. I used to at my pool. I have a short course pool. I only need 2. All right. And you need a head timer. That's the person that stands there with 2 watches. In case somebody else's watch in a lane malfunctions, they can trade out. You can have 1 or 2, depending on how you want to do that. You need an announcer to give general announcements. To me, this is a hard position to find. I don't find many parents that want to be announcers. I don't guess we don't have people that want to hear their own voices. I would love to be an announcer. I think it'd be great. But yeah, just think all kinds of announcements about the swim shop that's there. They talk about concessions. They maybe say what events in the water. You know, what have you. Any announcements you need to be made. You should have a hospitality chairperson. Now, granted, they're not going to do everything, but they should be running your hospitality room. They can plan the meals. They can purchase the items if they need to, or get people to donate items. But they're kind of supervising and organizing that hospitality room. You should have a concessions chairperson, someone that is organizing your concessions, whether they're purchasing or somebody else on your team has to purchase. They're deciding what if they're gonna make tacos for breakfast or just get donuts, and what they're gonna grill for lunch or what have you. You can have an ad chairperson that maybe goes out and collects ads for your heat sheet, and you maybe get donations of things for either hospitality or concessions. I have not had success in having somebody on my team do this. I don't know. People don't like to go out and ask for money anymore. And then a meet program and awards chairperson. I don't know. I don't have one of these. Does anybody have anybody like this on their team? So they are in charge of doing the awards, or, okay, ordering them, or, okay, so ordering, and then selling your heat sheets or your meet programs if you choose to do that. Most people are getting away from that now and doing electronic. The other thing I think I added on here, I had something on here, sorry. Oh, I told you, the assistant console operator. We also have a volunteer coordinator on our team. So we have a lady that stands at the front door, and when people come in, they give them their name badge so that everybody knows they're a volunteer. They make sure they know where to go and what their job is. They make sure people actually show up and leave when they're supposed to. So it's nice to have somebody like that to control that situation. You might have somebody that's in charge of picking up and returning equipment. So like a Gulf trailer or radios, whatever you're borrowing from the Gulf. Equipment setup. It's nice if you have some parents that can help put in the touchpad, set up the chairs and tables, the PA system, things like that at your venue. And then it's definitely nice to have cleanup. Most facilities you're going to have a custodian or 2, but it's always nice. Like we only have 1 custodian. So it's nice to have 1 or 2 parents to help that person clean up, because it's a big job after a swim meet. All right. You as a meet director cannot do all these jobs. That's why you need all of these people to help you. Appoint key positions on an annual basis. At my club, we have a parent meeting in September, and we list all these positions so that people kind of know what they are, and especially your chairperson positions. I always try to hit people up before that parent meeting so I can introduce them. Match people with jobs that you think they're good at. Don't put somebody as your safety marshal that is quiet or that's too loud and not a people person, okay? And is volunteering a part of your club's requirements? Is there most clubs do have a volunteering requirement, whether it's hours or what have you. And train new volunteers, and at your inter-squad meets, we have a little inter-squad meet every year, and we at least get our parents out there timing. Because some people are actually scared to actually time, so we get our new parents out there timing. Have 2 or more meet directors at the meet. That's always helpful. We talked about that. Make a list of positions needed at each meet. All right, this is very old school. This is a volunteer sign-up paper. This was created, gosh, Henry, how many years ago? I used this probably 10 years ago. Long time. Now look how tiny, that's how tiny it actually comes out. And we would post this on our window at the office of the pool. People would come and write their name in. Ashley remembers her dad used to do that. Now you have great things like Sign Up Genius is a great way to get people to sign up. And Team Unify can actually do it. So right where you go to enter your kids at the meet, there's a little job sign up button that you can press. And it lists all the jobs for the meet. And you can go in and type in whatever you want, description, the shift time, all that good stuff. We actually use the Team Unify job sign up for hospitality and concession donations as well. So that's kind of a good thing, so your parents know what they need to bring if you ask them for donations. So I don't know if anybody would use this. Archaic. All right, now we're going to talk about safety marshals. This was a huge topic of conversation last year. So your safety marshals are supposed to be well identified. So whatever you want to have your safety marshals wear is up to you as a team. They have those beautiful, they love to wear, they're so fashionable, bright safety vests. You can get them in orange or green or yellow. They're really great. And my safety marshals hate wearing them. But you can have t-shirts made for them in a bright color. They just need to be something that stands out so that everybody knows who the safety marshal is. Because that's a person that somebody's going to go to where when there's an incident on deck. Whether it's an accident, an incident, what have you. They need to be able to find the safety marshal. Okay? Did I scan all that? So they have full authority to warn or order to cease and desist, and along with the referee, they can have somebody removed from your meet if they're behaving in an unsafe manner or using profane or abusive language or disrupting the meet. Have had it happen. Parents fighting in the stands. It's crazy, but it's happened. I have one of the best safety marshals. She's been compared to a TSA agent at the airport. So I take that as a compliment. All right. They must be at least 21. They have to be registered. They have to pass background screening. And they have to take the APT course. A registered, they say meet marshal here. They're the one and the same. A registered safety marshal is required to have a meet sanction. And they cannot perform any other job at the meet. That is super important. A lot of teams use coaches because coaches already have all this certification. And that's great, but that's all they can do at the meet. They can't step away for a few minutes with that vest on and go to their swimmer that they actually coach. They can't do that. They can only be a safety marshal, okay? And if that's the only safety marshal listed on your meet announcement, they cannot take off their vest and go over and coach because they are the safety marshal. Okay, so
That is unless you have multiple.
if you have multiple, yes. So my suggestion is to have multiple safety marshals, but that's the same thing as your meet directors. Okay, any one of them has to be at any session, any one session of the meet. All right. Let me see what the next slide is. Okay, so let's go back. We had a big discussion last year.
Oh, sorry. I have a quick question. If you're using a coach as a safety marshal, they can't step off deck and coach. If your coach is also your meet director, is it the same rule?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. If the coach is listed as any of those personnel on your meet announcement besides coach, then they cannot step off and be a coach unless you have another
second person.
Right.
Okay.
So like we had that situation and we would just put like if I was meet director on Saturday, I'd put Paige Sickham a Saturday, Alicia Leger Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd put coach, Paige Sickham a Sunday, so that anybody walking in would know.
Do you have to specify that in the meet announcement?
You
or
don't
you
have
just
to.
be
You don't
prepared
have
do
to.
it? Okay.
You don't have to. We just did because I just feel like that's a more organized way to do it. But some teams do it. You sometimes need, what do we call them? What was the other word we used? Safety marshal.
Well, they're deputies or they're meet marshals.
Meet marshals, other helpers that aren't going to be on the pool deck. Maybe they're up in your stands. Maybe they are outside
Working the door.
working the door where they're not actually stepping on the pool deck. Those they still need to wear a vest so that they are identifiable for someone to come for help. But they do not have to have these certifications. But they cannot be listed on your meet announcement.
So is the exception to the rule your officer, if you hire police officers to monitor
Oh, yeah.
your?
Yes, police officer, we don't.
Okay, I'm just making
But they're
sure.
not listed on your meet announcement.
No, they're
just
not,
your-
but you know.
Yeah,
there's
they're
rule
a
for the
volunteer.
exception.
They're essentially a volunteer. It's like your parent volunteers that are timing. They're on the deck, but they don't have to have all this certification unless you're a U of H. That will never happen for me again, by the way. But anyway, all right. All right. So, any questions about what I've said so far about safety marshals? Okay. Safety marshals need to arrive at least 15 minutes before your warm-up start, and they check in with the meet director or your volunteer coordinator. And then the meet director really needs to discuss any kind of special safety concerns with them. If there is a broken tile somewhere, if there is, you have to rope off an area, whatever the situation is, make sure that your safety marshal knows, because they're the ones that are going to be dealing with that. They should have a whistle. They should be easily identifiable, vest, bright t-shirt, what have you. I don't think a hat is sufficient. I think they have to have some kind of top, shirt, vest, something like that. They should marshal your warm-up, warm-down areas throughout the meet, and they should not leave their area until coverage is provided. And we talked about the report of occurrence, that they are one of the ones that can submit the report of occurrence on the USA Swimming website. All right, they should be making sure that swimmers are behaving in a safe manner, so no running, no playing in the warm-up, warm-down area, etc., no abusive behavior or language. They should notify the coach of any swimmer who is behaving or acting in an unsafe manner. They should also use appropriate language as well. And their role is to help maintain a safe environment. So they need to be paying attention to what's going on. I have been at meets where I have seen a safety marshal sitting in a chair sleeping, sitting in a chair on their phone, sitting in their chair watching the meet. I don't know. To me,
Is that the safety marshal or I can't remember what you call it.
yeah, the deputy or
They're not even deputies, they're like the other
I
safety
think your
monitors.
monitors probably.
And
could.
they could fall asleep there on their phone, I'm just
But
saying.
your person that's your actual official safety marshal
Right.
should not be doing any of that.
Right.
And their job is for safety of the meet. And I don't even know how they could be sitting and sleeping and on their phones. I don't.
They should
There's
be walking
too
around
much
all the
going
time.
on all the time. Yeah. So yeah.
One thing I
So
want to point out here that you have that's very important, I personally think, is for any volunteer, not just your safety marshal, meet director, notify the coach of any
Yes.
swimmer that's behaving in a way that they shouldn't, because it's up to the coach to engage with their swimmer.
it is,
not
'cause you
for
can't
the
find their
volunteers.
parent.
Yeah.
So yes, and most you can tell usually what team a kid is from. They either have an identifying suit or a swim cap or a shirt or what have you.
Does the safety marshal have to take issues like that to the referee? If they've been warned multiple times? and they're
Personally,
not-
I would go to your meet director first.
Okay.
I would rather my safety marshal come to me as a
And
meet
then the
director.
meet director goes to
And then if
them?
I can't rectify the situation with the parent or the swimmer or the coach or whatever the issue is, then I'm going to go to my meet referee. Because then the meet referee ultimately
Has the
can.
ultimate say. Yeah.
Yes, your safety marshal does too. It says it said in there, your safety marshal can call the sheriff.
Okay.
They can escort people out of the meet, but unfortunately, you're probably going to have a heavy, like a meet referee, to help you with that situation. And safety marshals too need to be policing parents too, because there are parents I've had parents that say they're coaches so they can get on the deck to go see their kid. I've had parents that, like I said, fighting in the stands, or I've had parents that are using tobacco on school property. I mean, things like that. You have to police those kind of things. And sometimes with parents, it's hard to know what team they're from. If they're not wearing an identifying shirt or hat or something, sometimes you don't know what team they're from. So that's a little difficult to handle. All right, so we've gone through all these. Entry chairman. Is this you, Henry?
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, were there any questions about safety marshals or anything? Okay, good.
So now we're going to talk about some specific rules for Gulf meets. So the technical planning committee puts in certain rules for certain meets to make the meets run smoother. They're supposed to allow the meet to be conducted in a way that fits the needs of our LSC. All LSCs do things that are different. If you've gone to other LSCs with your kids and swum in other meets, you'll see that other LSCs do things different. There are common USA swimming rules that we all have to follow, but each LSC can set up their own LSC rules in the way that they conduct meets, as long as it doesn't interfere with USA swimming rules. And so there will be some language that's thrown around about how we organize our meets or score them or whatever that will show up in the announcement. The challenge for you as the meet director and also for your admin officials is to take that language that's in the announcement and integrate it into your meet manager file. Because we have a lot of things that we do that we try, the way that we organize our meets, but our meet manager software will not organize the meet that way. And so you have to use other tools and ways of sorting things out to find out if a swimmer is over-entered or under-entered or whatever. And it can be sometimes after the meet is over that we find out that the kid shouldn't have actually been in the meet, right? We have that happen all the time. So the way that we try to avoid kids swimming in the wrong meet, whether they're over-entered or under-entered, is by imposing fines, okay? And I don't know if I'm not talking about fines here, but that may come up later. And so what really helps is if you can work with your admin official and your referee early on, before the meet ever starts, to try to learn whether or not a swimmer should not be in your meet. Because if they're an over-entered swimmer, it's $50 for every event that they were entered in. It can get extremely expensive. If they're an under-entered swimmer, then it's $20 for every event that they swam.
You mean by time, right? Motivational time?
Just based on entry times.
Or, okay, not number of events they've been entered in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's, yes, go ahead.
I think in more detail to that, I would say going into the SWIMS database, I know it's time consuming, but it takes that extra step to, because of the way a lot of the qualifying standards are in the Gulf, they overlap at some points. And it does take some extra effort, and it is important to reach out and get support, and it just makes it's for your own good, trust me, because the cleaner your meat can be going into the day of the meet, the better off you're going to be, because it will come out, whatever you don't catch prior, and that it just takes that extra step.
Yeah.
That means going into that database and checking those.
The worst-
I know it's time consuming, but that is.
The worst situation for you and your admin official to be in is where a parent comes down halfway through the meet and says, this swimmer who's won every event up to this point shouldn't be in this meet.
And you've already done awards.
You've
and
already
passed
done
them
awards
out.
and so on. And then you have to tell the coach that not only are we taking your kids' awards away and their times, but they're going to be fined $50 for every event that they swam. Yes?
It's also important, too, to communicate with the admin vice chair, because you will have that occasional swimmer whose birthday falls where they're qualified for one meet, but they're not going to be old enough, so
Right.
then they're not qualified for the next meet that their age is. And I think the admin vice chair has the final say on permission to do that.
That's correct.
And then, so as meet director, you also have to be in contact with them to find out if that situation, if anyone has given that permission.
So let's say, to Jenny's point, let's say you have a swimmer who's in the meet and it comes up that their age doesn't make sense based on their ability for being in the meet. Can you automatically kick them out of the meet as the meet director? Here's a quiz for you. No, that's the referee's job. Okay, you cannot kick the kid out of the meet. It's the referee's decision at the point in the meet, right, once you've assigned that referee to be your meet referee, from the time that point through the sanctioning process all the way through to the end, they have the authority to remove kids or whatever. The penalty for them swimming in the meet, that's different. The the administrative vice chairman will assess the fines, and a lot of times there's a bartering back and forth. I didn't know, and we reduced the fines down a little bit. Okay, so understanding the rules, the Gulf rules of your meet, understanding the consequences of allowing a kid to swim in your meet illegally, whether they are over-entered or under-entered or too many events, and then understanding that you may have missed it going into the meet, and it may come up during the meet, and you have to be kind of prepared for it. You got to go to your referee and let them deal with it. Okay, I know referees love this part. So the issue is that, and I'll point these things out as we go, the meet manager software can never figure out all of the rules that we set up in Gulf Swimming. It's just not set up. There are, like what was pointed out, sometimes you have to go to swims and look the swimmer's name up, see what events that they really are qualified for, and then go from there. Okay? Coaches and parents of other kids are the best course of filtering, and they will know. My wife knows when a swimmer shouldn't be in a meet. She knows all your kids' times on everybody. I don't know why she does, but I tell you what, there are a lot of coaches and parents who are like that, and they will figure it out, and it'll come to light, and then you'll have to deal with it. Okay. So now, the rules that are set up in Gulf Swimming, and in particular for your swim meet that you're hosting, if you're doing a Gulf sponsored meet, if you're doing one of your invitationals, you don't have to use Gulf rules. You can use whatever rules you want. Okay? You can use no rules other than following the USA Swimming rules. Okay? But when you're doing a Gulf sponsored meet, a Gulf meet that is structured by the Technical Planning Committee, where all the coaches in the LSC have voted on and agreed to the rules that we use, you must follow those rules. If something happens where it doesn't make sense for a particular rule, or there is a oversight of a rule that's written into the announcement, we were supposed to have changed it, and it got caught after the sanctioning process, then you can actually approach the technical planning chairman. He can make a recommendation to the board that we update the rule and make sure that it's done correctly during the meet. But otherwise, you can't change the rules that are put in your announcement. Okay, preceding events. So depending on the season that we're in, short course season, we precede events that are 200 yards and shorter. We deck seed or require circle in for events that are 400 yards and longer. And the reason why I've got the slash meters in here is because years ago, people probably don't remember, we used to do short course meter meets in the fall and spring. Entry fees and swimmer surcharges are set by the Technical Planning Committee, of course approved by the Board of Directors and the House of Delegates. Once again, for your club-sponsored meets, you can use facility swimmer surcharges or whatever entry fees that you want. You don't have to follow the Gulf numbers. Contact our new Technical Planning Chairman is Mike Yearwood, but the email address that we've been using for over the last few years is the same. All long course meets, all the events are circle in or deck seated. Yes?
Could you please explain, I'm new to swimming, what is a pre-seed versus a deck seed meet?
Okay, pre-seed means when you get your events in before the meet ever starts, you can seed it using the software, create the heat and lane assignments. And that way when people walk in the door for the first day of the meet, they know exactly, even before warm-up starts, what heat and lane they're in. Okay? Deck seating is where 45 minutes before the session starts that day, the kids need to circle in for the events that they're there to swim. Then the meet host will seed it and create the heat sheets before the event starts. Okay? The reason why we pre-seed and deck seed now, the logic is that in long course we are trying to eliminate as many open lanes as possible, because in long course where, you know, we don't have two pools necessarily that we can swim at the same time. So we do a chase start method, but the heat interval is such that we spend much more time at the facility because it's longer. In short course, it's not as big of an issue. Also in the fall, we also have a lot of new kids that join the LSC, and to try to eliminate the amount of confusion, especially in the early months, we precede those events. There was a time in our LSC where we were only concerned with how efficient we could make swim meets, and there was a time when we used to precede everything, or deck seed everything. Well, there was pre-seed everything, and then there was deck seed everything, and now we're partly deck seeding and partly pre-seeding. I've been through all of it. So, okay. Now, when you do your club-sponsored meets, you can do it however you want. If you want to pre-seed everything, including the 400 and above, you can do that. You don't have to follow. These are rules specifically for Gulf sponsored meets. 4-hour rule. Okay, I'm going to explain it, and then the next few slides is just basically what I'm going to explain. There's the idea that based on other sports, children who are 12 and younger really don't do well in a sport where they're having to be on the field or on the court for more than 4 hours. And so USA Swimming has a guideline, not a rule. It's a guideline that when when teams or LSCs organize swim meets for 12 and unders, that they should be within 4 hours. Now, in Gulf Swimming, we want all ages to be under 4 hours, but the older kids can handle being on the deck a little bit more, especially when they get to the age where they're doing double practices and all that. Swimming high school, they're in the water a lot, so they understand that. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to lose the base. And so it was a guideline that was set out by USA Swimming years ago. It's in the USA Swimming handbook. It's not a rule. It's a guideline. Here in Gulf Swimming, when the Technical Planning Committee is organizing swim meets, we always have that in mind. We want our swimmers to be in the pool for under 4 hours, especially if they're 12 and under. That's why you see like certain meets. Every year you look at the schedule, oh my gosh, we have another venue, and then another venue, and then another venue. Where when I first started coaching here in the Gulf in the late 90s, we had one Gulf Champs for all ages. There was one, it was called Gulf Champs, right? I mean, that was it. So we fit the entire LSC from 10 and unders up to senior on one swim meet. But as time has gone on and our LSC has grown, right, the pool is still only 8 lanes, right? So we have to have more and more and more meets. As time went on, the ability for other teams to sponsor their own team-sponsored meet or club-sponsored meets came up. And we got into the situation where clubs were running these huge meets. There was a classic meet that was done at the University of Texas years ago, and it's one that people point to. It ended at midnight. It went so long. It started at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it took them so long, it went to midnight, okay? And so, while we never got into those kinds of situations here in our own LSC, we decided somewhere along the way that we were going to start making some hard, fast rules for teams that hosted club meets to make sure that they were following the guideline of the 4-hour suggestion. Okay, so that's kind of the history of what's going on. Now, if you host a Gulf-sponsored meet and we mess up, the Technical Planning Committee messes up, and the board and the House messes up, and your meet turns out to be over 4 hours long, and you've got 12 and under swimming in your meet, you're not penalized, okay? Because we goofed, we made the mistake. We put too many kids in your meet. Even though we planned and we forecasted, we made a mistake, okay? So you're not subject to the 4-hour rule when you host Gulf-sponsored meets, okay? However, when you run your own club-hosted meets, if your club-hosted meet goes beyond 4 hours with the 12 and unders, then you are subject to a fine. The fine is twice the splash fee, okay? That's the fine. So not only do you owe the splash fee of $1.75, but then you owe 2 times the splash fee as the fine for all of those swimmers that swam past 4 hours. So some of the confusion here is that, oh, I only have to pay the splash fee twice. No, you got to pay the splash fee, and then you got to pay $3.50 beyond that in order to pay the fine. Yeah.
Does the fine apply if your timeline projects that you will finish within 4 hours, but for whatever reason you go over?
That's correct. So I'm going to get, there's a slide that comes up here. So we know that things happen, right? We know that if you're running a meet, you may have a late start because the lights weren't on, or the chemistry wasn't right, or you may have a pool that's subject to lightning rules, right? Even if it's indoor. So you have to stop. Okay. So there's weird things that can happen. So there's a rule that you have to use a certain timeline or heat interval. You have to use a certain heat interval, whether it's short course or long course, depending on the course of the meet. So I think it's here in the next couple of slides. So remember that it only applies to events where 12 and under is scored. So let's say your last event of your meet is the 400 freestyle, and that event goes for an hour. And it starts within the 4 hours, but the last 3 heats are projected to be after the 4 hours. Well, if you were to score that event, senior or 15 and over, 13, 14, 11, 12, 10 and under, then no matter who the kids are swimming in those last 3 heats after 4 hours, you owe the fine for those kids that swam in that 4 hours, as long as it fit the timeline, the projected timeline. What doesn't count against the 4-hour rule is if that event was assigned as open. Okay, so you didn't score it 12 and under, 10 and under, whatever, and it still went over 4 hours. That's an open event. It's not considered to be a scored meet of 10 and under and 12 and under. That's how a lot of teams get around that rule.
So scored, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so if swimmers 11 and over are eligible to swim the 400 and it goes over the 4-hour rule, then you're fined for every splash over the 4-hour rule?
As long as it's
or only if you're scoring?
Only if you're scoring.
So if you're not scoring?
If you're not scoring it, if you leave the event as open,
Okay.
and you don't score 11, 12, or 12 and under, or 10 and under, then you're fine.
So even if it's called 11 and over, you're fine as long as you don't score?
And I mean, that kind of gets around the whole spirit of the rule. And a lot of teams have done it this way in order to avoid, because they're trying to get as many swims as they can into a meet, and they use the distance events to kind of help them with that 4-hour rule.
So just a clarification on that. So if you score it as, 10 under, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you've got a mixture of people who swim after that 4-hour event, some 12 and under, some 13 and up, are the 13 and ups even subject to that?
No, just
fine?
11 and 12s. Or 12 and under events.
Thank you.
And the fines are only affiliated with Gulf?
No, club hosted meets.
Club
Invitation.
Invitations. Club hosted.
Invitations.
Let's see. So what we want is for club hosts to really make sure that the number of teams that they're inviting into their meets is structured in such a way that we don't have our 12 and unders swimming past 4 hours. And one way to do it is just organize your events. It doesn't mean that your event can't go past 4 hours. Just make sure that all your 12 and unders are done in the first 4 hours. Sometimes you want to throw the mile and the 1,000 in there. You're going to go past 4 hours. There's no way. Just leave it as an open event. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you just don't want. You want to make sure that you're not getting yourself into a situation where you're having to pay a huge fine because you didn't organize your events in a certain way, or the coach who was saying, "Oh yeah, sure, oh come on in my meet, oh yeah, the more the merrier," and then you as the meet host go, "What did you do?" Or if you have someone who's accepting entries into your club sponsored meet, that they're actually running the timeline. A team comes in, you run the timeline. A team comes in, you run the timeline. And you don't tell that team who's entered your meet that they're in until you run the timeline and see that you're within that 4 hours, right? Okay, so be a little careful with those club-sponsored meets. So, I don't know where was it, the 20? It's in here somewhere. It's written in the rule in the Gulf handbook. But if it's a short course meet and you're doing flyovers, or if it's a long course meet and you're doing flyovers, the heat interval has to be 20 seconds. You have to run your timeline with a 20-second heat interval. If it's chase starts for long course, then you run your timeline with a 0-second heat interval. And so whatever that predicted timeline comes out, if it comes out to be before 4 hours and you run past 4 hours because you were slow that day or there were problems, you're cool. Everything is good. Okay? But if your projected timeline comes out where your 12 and unders are swimming past 4 hours, then you know that you're going to probably have some fines, unless you can make the meet go faster. If you can make the meet go faster and you get done before 4 hours, then you're cool. Yeah.
If you have to change pads because there's pads malfunctioning, does the clock stop when you start to change pads and then start back when the meet starts back up? Or is any kind of equipment adjustment or stoppage?
So referees are in the room. Have we made that adjustment to our?
Or is that part of the 4 hours?
That's considered part of the 4 hours.
And that was part of her question in the back too, is what if you have
Right.
X, Y, Z happen? It doesn't matter, your clock
I
is.
mean, at what
clock
point
never
would you
stops.
say this is an uncontrolled situation and?
It's more like just like a
Just to clarify,
weather.
you're only at that risk if you plan to go over 4.
That's right.
If you are under 4 on your timeline and bad things happen and you go over 4, you're not getting fined.
That's a great
Oh,
point.
okay.
That's a
Okay.
great point.
Good.
Thank you. Okay, more rules. Let's see. So Gulf sponsored meets, I don't know, the host doesn't create the meet manager.
Not anymore, no.
No, so that line.
Oh, meets with one venue. We
with.
used to, that's
Oh, yeah.
changed.
Not anymore.
Yeah, that's changed.
So we changed that this year?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this first line is not.
You can cross that out.
Yeah.
So who creates it?
TPC.
The technical planning committee is creating all of the meet files now, all the meet files for all meets, whether it's single venue or not. So one thing, and that this has changed too, right? Are we collecting everything on a Saturday now?
No, it's a Friday.
A Friday?
Friday.
So we're collecting everything on a Friday?
Yes. And if it's
2 weeks out
2 weeks out.
for a single
2 weeks out
venue
for
and
a
3 weeks
single,
out for
yes.
multi-venue?
Yes.
So that's what this is.
That's for
With more than one venue, and then this is, okay. So if you're a one venue, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. If meet entries are due on a Friday and your team starts a meet on a Friday, can you update times on the Monday? Since the meet that the kids will be getting new times in starts at 5 and the meet entry deadline is midnight, so they will have already begun getting new times.
So what's
And the
happened-
entries are due.
I think what's happened in the past, if it's a single venue meet, I think the meet host has been courteous and said due by Monday at 6 p.m.
Well, so typically what happens with TPC and you send all your entries, TPC will start dividing the Monday of the following week.
Okay.
So you can still resend your entries an updated file to TPC.
Okay.
If you send, well,
But you need to
do
let them
need-
know that
yes,
there's.
you do
okay.
need to let TPC know that you're sending a new file.
Okay.
But you do have to send your file on that Friday in order to
Right.
get in the.
Okay.
So they have an accurate number,
Yes.
at least a starting number as they start.
So the point of this slide was to determine whether or not you got the meet file, the entry file. And the answer now is no. For any Gulf-sponsored meet, the TPC will send you, or the technical planning chairman, or somebody in the board will send you the meet file, or I guess they'll post it on the web.
No, they send it to the meet host.
TPC will send it to the host.
Okay. If you're doing a club-sponsored meet, then you're responsible for making your own meet file. Okay. For a single venue meet, like age group champs, senior champs like Gulf champs. Those will only have one venue, and the host will receive the entries. The technical planning chairman will not receive the entries because it's only one venue. But for multi-venue meets, like fall champs and the spring champs series, those will all go to the technical planning chairman 3 weeks out. They'll divide it out equally and then send you your meet file with the teams who are in your meet.
One thing, sorry.
Yes.
One thing to note is, as a meet director, you need to know who on your team is actually receiving those files, because it may be different from every team. Because like for us, the head coach receives the files, and then we figure it all out from there. But some teams do things differently, so if everyone's here is like, oh, I'm meet director, I'm expecting to get this file, you may or may not get that file. It's best to work with the team.
So Mark, how are we
Typically,
sending?
TPC will send the email with the file. We try to send it to the meet director based on what your announcement is, or we send it to the head coach.
Okay, so three event rule and up down rule. So these are two rules that we use quite a bit in the LSC. So the up down rule, that's an easy, more of an easy one to understand. And the whole idea is if you have a qualifying standard in a meet, and the swimmer only makes one qualifying standard, going all the way to a meet to swim one event at this age is probably not practical. So by having up down, it allows the swimmers to swim the next event either up or down. So if let's say they make the 100 freestyle, that allows them to go down to swim the 50. It allows them to also swim the 200 freestyle. So then they get 3 events, okay, even though they only qualified for 1. It's a way of setting up a bonus structure without having bonus standards, okay? So that's the whole point for up-down. 3 event rule is a little bit different. Where up-down, they can only swim those events that they qualify plus their up and down rules within the limit of how many events they can swim in the meet. The 3 event rule, if they make 3 qualifying standards, they can swim those 3 events or not those 3 events and any other event within the number of events allowed per day per meet. Okay? The up-down rule is much more restrictive, right? It only allows the kids to swim their best events or their best strokes. But the 3 event rule allows them to swim things beyond their best events and best strokes. And when do we use the 2? We use the 3 event rule for when we're trying to divide the LSC. We have, what is the average number of swimmers per month? It's like 4,000 or 5,000.
About 4 or 5.
Okay, and so what we don't want is we don't want half those kids swimming in this meet and then another third of them swimming in the next meet, right? Because then the meets get too big. And where we use the 3 event rule a lot is in the long course season, where you either make this series of meets or you make this series of meets, but you don't go to both. The up-down rule is used when swimmers can qualify for a championship meet. So we use this one in the fall, where kids they can go from the fall champs meet and then go to the age group champs meet. It doesn't really change the number of swimmers in the age group champs meet, so it allows some kind of a progression. Because what we try to do in the LSC is to try to give kids not only the experience of swimming, but the ability to improve and make it from one meet series to the next. And so up-down is much more selective. 3 event is much more relaxed, but we use both of these in the LSC. The flip side of 3 event is the 2 event rule, right? So if they have 3, let's say 8 times, they can go to this meet. But if they have 2 or less, then they go to the other meet series. So you see, we've seen the other side of the 3 event, 2 or less. Pay attention to the 3 event rule. Sometimes can get a little sticky at swim meets because you don't have to have, the kids don't have to swim those 3 events in the meet, right? Let's say they're a breaststroker and they make the 50 breast, 100 breast, 200 breast, and their coach doesn't want them to swim breaststroke. He wants them to swim fly, back, IM, freestyle. So he doesn't enter them in any of the events that they've qualified for the meet. And when you run the report to show what swimmers have no qualifying standards, that swimmer will show up. All right? But it doesn't mean that they're not qualified to swim in the meet. So that's at the time where if the question comes up, should this swimmer be in our meet, you go to swims, you look up at their times in swims, you discuss this with your AO, you discuss this with the referees so that there isn't a situation where you kick the kid out of the meet by mistake. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah.
The same thing applies when an event's not offered at that meet. So if the kid has a qualifying standard in that event and that event's not offered at the meet, they're still qualified to swim because they have that third time in that event.
Yeah, a lot of times that happens. Did you hear what Mark said? So that a lot of times that happens with like the 1,000 and the mile. Or maybe the 1,000, the mile is offered at the meet, but not the 1,000. Or the 1,500 is entered at the meet, but not the 800. Their third A time or their third qualifying time may be one of the events that's not offered. They still have made the qualifying standard for 3 events, so they can actually swim in the meet. Okay? What we're trying to do in the world of our LSC is to divide these meets up and give everybody a chance to compete and do their thing, but at the same time it becomes kind of a difficulty to just sort it all out and figure things out. There's always going to be some in between, so you kind of have to be ready for it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does that apply when you've got a short course time that would get converted to a long course time or vice versa?
Not converted. We will have a standard that are short course, and we will have standards that are long course. Do not ever use the meet manager or team manager software to determine whether a swimmer can qualify or doesn't qualify based on a conversion factor.
Yes, they do crossovers. If you have a long course meet and they have 3 qualifying times short course, then yes, they can swim that long course meet.
Yeah, so if they have 1 long course and 2 short course, they've made the 3 event.
Or combination.
As long as they're not in the same event.
Okay.
But don't ever use the converter in meet manager or team manager or whatever to determine whether or not a swimmer has actually qualified.
But a 50 free long course and a 50 free short course doesn't count as 2 cuts.
Correct.
Counts as
Right.
What about the 100 IM short course and then long course?
Yes, it would count as
Like if they made the 100 IM in short course, even though it's not offered in long course, I suppose that they have a third cut.
Yeah.
It'd be the same thing as an event that's not offered in the meet.
We try to always give the benefit to the swimmer. So anyway, these weird things come up. Can't be built into the software. You just have to work with your referee and make sure that everybody's talking about it. You don't do something incorrect like kick the kid out of the meet when they really are eligible to swim. Okay, beyond IMX rules, these were brought up to try to make our Gulf long course meets a little bit more manageable. So up until a couple of years ago, any swimmer could swim in all the long course meets in every event. And once we started getting to the size where we weren't able to have enough long course venues to fill, allow all the kids to swim, and we were going well past 4 hours. So if you think about the evolution of our swim meets, right? So the first evolution of a swim meet where you have a session, all the kids swim, right? All ages. And if you can fit that in 4 hours, great. We accomplished. Then the LSC grows, right? So then you say, okay, we need more than 1 venue. Now we got 2 venues. Okay, so all kids swim in the morning at this venue, and then they swim in this one. Okay, great. Then you go to the next year, the LSC grows again. You call on teams to host the long course meet. We say, we need 3 venues. You only get 2. What do? Now the LSC has grown. If you do, if you do single sessions at each meet, all of a sudden now your sessions have gone past 4 hours. So what have we done? We split the sessions, all right? And that's when we went to the fact that we didn't have enough pools to just keep growing like we do in short course. We went to split sessions where 13 and over swam in the mornings, 12 and under swim in the afternoon. There's a break in between because of warm-ups. Now each session is within 4 hours. The next evolution we went to where split session no longer solves our problem unless we add a third session where we do, one and then another, boys and then girls, and we've had to do that, which makes things really hard. So the next step was to take kids out of long course meets, right, to swim their events in short course meets, of events where they don't qualify up to a certain level. So the technical planning committee came up with this beyond IMX rule, where the swimmer has to have a B time in the next higher event. So to swim in the next shortest distance event. So in other words, for the 11 and 12 to swim the 200 fly back or breast, or 400 IM or 800 free, they have to have the beat time in the 100 fly, 100 back, 100 or breast, the 200 IM, and the 400 free. Okay? What it does is it eliminates, it reduces the size of the meet to make it manageable to within 4 hours, because we can't go on to another venue, or split session has already taken it to the 4 hour limit and has gone behind or beyond it. So it keeps the meets at a reasonable size. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't exclude swimmers from trying to achieve their IMX points. Because the events that are excluded here are not in their IMX points.
Can I add something right quick?
Yeah.
One of the slides that aren't in here, that is not in here, is about, do you want to finish this one? Finish IMX real, sorry.
I think that's it. So if a swimmer is entered into an event where they don't make, they shouldn't swim, let's say they don't have a beat time in the 100 fly and they swim the 200 fly in the meet, then they are subject to a $20 fine for that 200 fly. Okay? I think that the technical planning committee does a pretty good job of scanning through the entries before the meet ever starts to call out the kids that shouldn't be there. But you may have on-deck entries, all right? A swimmer may slip by, and it might get caught after the meet.
Actually, I had a question.
Sure.
On it, perhaps. If you go back to the next slide, that is the actual language that is used in Gulf Open announcements. I had multiple parents last year come up to me who had an 800 swimmer who wanted to swim the 500 free because this specific part says 10 and under, even though in the events listing it's listed as a 9-10. Is there a way we could put something in here with like a little asterisk that says, you know, while this says 10 and under, this is just a rule for IMX. This does not change the events offered at this meet. So I had multiple parents with 8-year-olds that had 200 free time or had swum in the open or an invitation with a 500 free time where they had to be and wanted to swim at a Gulf Open meet this 500.
But it wasn't offered because it was a 9 and 10 event.
So
right, that's what I'm saying, but they were trying to use this part of the announcement to say, my child should be there.
But it is not.
But this is just, this is asking age groups, not with
I get
events.
that, I'm just saying that
I don't know
it's
how
very
you-
confusing to parents who are going to try and argue their best to try and get their kid into this event, even though they're not old enough to swim that event. And they're hanging on that 10 and under right there.
So what would you add to that?
I'd maybe make an asterisk and say this does not change the
offered
actual
events.
schedule of events in this meet.
Well, the event description has nothing to do with a timestamp.
Yeah.
You know, it's not,
I get all that. I understand all
The
of
event
that.
says 9:10.
It's-
It can't be 8 unless you turn 9 before the meet, and you don't have
That's
that.
a coaching.
But they're going to
That's
use
a
that.
coaching.
Look, you're
That's a
going to
coaching.
have multiple meets last year where they argued and argued and argued.
Did you get the referee involved?
I got Bo involved and told him they couldn't.
There you go.
Happened at one of our meets, and I think it was a 10 and under, and it was the 500 free, and they actually had an A time in the 500, and they had an A time, and was it 800?
Yes, they had an A time in the 800, a no time in the 200.
Right, and so they were wanting to swim the 500, so obviously it was a competent swimmer, and so, you know, would it have been allowed? I mean,
Because the intent of, obviously, of the rule.
Yeah, you got to get the referee involved.
And
So what you got? Yeah, what somebody should have done a long time ago is if this kid swam at 800 in an A time, he probably did his best time at 100,
Right.
the 200,
Yeah,
the
the
500.
Right.
Right, and the coach should have called for the splits for that entire
Right,
event.
exactly.
And then that would have been,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, if the parent or the coach can show that this kid has an A time in the 800, The referee made reference.
And the referee did let it, so I was
Yes.
just curious as to how
Right.
it would come out when you look
But
back.
it's on the,
Kind of an isolated incident.
it's on the onus of the
Referee.
coach. That's what distance swimmers do all the time.
Right, they kill us.
Yeah, they can't sprint when it's time to sprint, but when they're relaxed and they're in their,
Exactly.
yeah, so, interesting. Any other questions? Okay.
Hold on, before you go on, I have one more thing to do with time qualifications. There's now a times eligibility statement in your meet announcements, and there's not a slide going over that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So now you have a window of time that kids can qualify for events, or have a time, an entry time. And it's usually from the, like for short course, it'll be February 2017 through the entry deadline of the meet. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of times at your championship meets or your meets where you have qualifying standards, you'll have a kid enter in a time that maybe they don't qualify for that meet. Or let me think, they may have swum the event after the entry deadline. I've had coaches come up and say, this kid has a time of this in the swims database. Well, okay, but they swam that event after the entry deadline. So they're still qualified to swim at that meet because the entry deadline was this day and they swam the event this day.
Okay, so that was just confusing. So let me read it back to you. Let me say it back to you so I make sure it's clear. So if a athlete swims and qualifies before the
It's more about overqualification than under.
before the date, the entry date cutoff, they can swim. If they qualify post the entry date cutoff, they cannot swim.
Correct. Unless the meet host has said you can enter late.
Or Gulf says,
recreate your
or Gulf says, can you guys please extend your
It's more about overqualification. So we host the 9 to 14 spring or short course champs meet in February, right?
Right.
You can't be overqualified because then you're going to go to age group champs. Okay. So you might have the entry deadline is 3 weeks out, but they might swim a meet a week after that entry deadline and go faster than the cutoff time. Thank you. But they can still, because it's after the deadline, they can still swim at short course champs too.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It helps some, it hurts others, and it's just the way it is.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. That's the rule.
Right, yeah.
And then if they qualified prior to that that time eligibility deadline, that time should not count either.
Right.
So if they swam in 2014 and did the time, but they haven't swam it since, then they're not supposed to be able to swim.
Yeah, the qualifying period is between February 1st of 2017 to the start of your meet, the entry, when the entries are due for your meet. That's the qualifying period.
It's usually a year prior. I mean, it'll shift.
So we have also entry fee, facility surcharge fees that go into your meet file. Depending on what kind of a pool you have, you get to charge a certain facility surcharge. If it's one lane or less in a 25-yard pool, then it's $2. If it's 2 lanes or more, it's $3.50. If it's 2 25-yard courses, it's $5. If it's 150 meter with no warm up, warm down, it's $3.50. If it's a 50-meter pool with at least one warm up, warm down, it's $6.50. And what we started doing last year was, if you don't want to sell meet announcements or meet programs at your facility, you can, and you want to publish it electronically through Meet Mobile or through your website, then you can add on another $2. But you got to make sure that you're publishing it, right? I mean, you got to make sure, otherwise nobody can see what the heck is going on. So
That is another volunteer opportunity for somebody to keep that up to date.
yeah.
And just so you know, guys know that the Gulf is going to set the athlete surcharge at $3.50 on the meet file. So you do have to go and check and make sure that the athlete surcharge is set up for your facility, right?
Yeah.
Because the Gulf is setting up one file for everybody. Majority of the time, some facilities don't have, let's say, 2 or more warm-up, warm-down lanes. So the file is still gonna say 350, so you have to go back and double check.
And that's a pain to collect that money
Yes.
after you've already published everything and teams have already sent you checks and all this.
Yeah, trying to collect from your coaches after the meet is over is almost impossible. You gotta pay attention to that, make sure you update your fees. One last thing, don't try to pull a fast one and take one lane and put a lane line in the middle of it and say you've got 2 lanes. We've had a host do that.
But why?
And that's a safety issue too. I mean, it's gonna be super overcrowded in a small space.
Just to get the extra $1.50.
All right, we're gonna move on to actual meet sanctioning, okay? This is 8 weeks out, 8 weeks out. All right. I don't know why that says late at 6 weeks out, but at 8 weeks out, you should pay your sanctioning fees, you should submit your sanction application, and you should submit your announcement, okay? For Gulf sponsored meets, you will have a template that is sent to you, hopefully on time to hit this 8-week window. Even if you are hosting an invitational within your club, you still have to follow this deadline right here. And all of these, a sample meet announcement, the application, all that is under meet forms on the Gulf Swimming website. Okay, a sanction application packet includes the sanction application form, the meet announcement, a sanction fee, we'll talk about fees in just a minute, a separate fee for the equipment trailer if you need to rent equipment, and we have this wonderful Gulf Pay system that you can pay online now. You don't have to mail a check in. It's super fabulous. Time trials, if you're going to run a time trials at your meet, that is an entirely separate sanction. Okay, now what we've done in the past with some of the Gulf sponsor meets, we've actually put the time trial information within your meet announcement. It still gets a separate sanction number, and you still have to fill out a separate sanction application. Okay?
Is that also $50 per day? Or is
Yes,
that
we're going to talk about those in a
$150?
minute.
Oh, sorry.
The fees are coming up. The fees are coming up because they can be confusing. Okay, so that's all of those things are due by your 8-week deadline. So if you are hosting meets, as soon as you find out your meet dates, I would get your calendar out and I'd put some big red circles on those deadlines so that you know when to get them in, so that because they do sneak up on you, especially if you host October meets, they will sneak up on you. All right, here's your fees. So if you are hosting a meet, for each day you are hosting, it is $50. Even if it's only 2 events on a Friday night, it is $50. For an approved meet, approved time trials or meet, $200. That's for the whole meet, right? It's not for
Yes.
That's
the whole
for
meet.
time trials and the meet
For an
together?
approved meet.
Okay.
And what's this?
So that means that if you,
The approved meet means that you can have swimmers that are non-USA Swimming members in your meet. So if you wanted to do a meet that had high school swimmers and club swimmers in it, you could do an approved meet, but it's going to cost you $200.
is that an additional $200?
No,
or
that's flat $200.
instead of the $50 per day?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
If you want to sanction a dual or tri-meet or inter-squad meet, it's $50 for the meet. For the meet. Excuse me? No matter how many days? I didn't know that.
Which one?
For the dual, tri, or inter-squad meet.
Right, only once.
But it's only one day. Is that $50
I
per
mean,
day?
inter-squads aren't.
Yeah, they're usually not 2 days. Some
But
of them
sometimes
are.
tri-meet can be.
I still
but it
think it's a
should
50 a day.
Tri-meet can be 2 days.
Yeah, that's still only one. That's still 50.
50 for the whole meet. For the whole meet, no matter how many days. If you are late turning in your sanction packet, it is a $100 late charge. Flat, not per day, $100. And your meet will not be sanctioned until you pay the late fee. If you want an observed meet, and an observed meet is...
So an observed meet is different than
okay.
an approved meet. Observed meets generally are applied to like the high school championship meets. Like,
District regionals.
District regionals, also
TISCA.
TISCA, and any invitationals that are prelim final.
It just means that you're going to have a USA Swimming official making sure that you're following USA Swimming rules.
Right.
That also means that the times that the swimmers swim in those meets
will be
then
into the USA
escalate to
Swimming
the USA
database.
Swimming database.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just a dual meet and the times don't get into
That's
it.
correct.
Correct. So it's
So,
really
yeah,
important
yeah, just like-
if you're hosting
yeah.
district and regionals.
So let me point just a second. So this is where things fall apart. You want to observe your meet, right? Let's say you're hosting a district meet, or you're hosting a region meet, or you're hosting an invitational for high school, and you want it to be observed. It has to be turned in, the observation form, there's a Form A and a Form B. Form B is what gets turned in for TISCA and invitationals that are prelim final. That requires the $50 fee. The one that's for district and region don't require the $50 fee.
That's right.
Okay? However, the forms need to be turned in to Rick Kellenbach, and that'll come up later in the presentation. Where this all falls apart is you've agreed to help your local high school team run this meet, but nobody's taking care of the sanctioning process. And your team, who's 3/4 of club swimmers, are going to be in that meet. You really need to get involved with your high school coaches and school to make sure that the form is being turned in. Because high school doesn't care really if the kids get their USA times or not. But you want to make sure that your club swimmers on your team get the credit for the swims that they did in the meet. Yes.
So, I think you're in your hand. Well, it doesn't matter. The observed meet request, could that be from any coach, high school coach, or does it have to come from the hosting
It
coach?
should come from a USA Swimming member. Because
okay.
on the form itself, there'll be lines for who the officials are going to be, that are USA Swimming officials.
So if I
And so
use
your-
the referees.
Your high school coach isn't going to know who your club officials are.
Most of them.
So whose job is it to request the observed meet? Is it the coach? Is it the
The
meet
coach
director
will
on the
probably know
team?
somebody,
Is
a
it-
parent on the team, or somebody that's going to help them that's going to fill this out and send it in.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be the meet director of the team.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last few years, the regional high school officials have submitted the applications for the observing.
Okay.
The district has been spotty, but the regional
Okay.
has been submitted.
There's also certain facilities, certain auditoriums, the facility
We'll do it,
people
yeah.
do
Like
it.
Mike Duswalt will do
Yeah.
it for
Yeah.
But it just behooves you to make sure that if you're doing an invitational or you're doing a district meet, that you're not letting this fall through the cracks. As a meet director for your club who uses that facility, who your team swimmers are in it, make sure that the observed process gets.
And how far out does that have to be requested?
Rick Kellenbach has to have it 2 weeks in advance.
And all it is a form.
It's a
You
form.
don't have to do an application and a sanction application and your announcement and all that. It's a form.
Yeah.
But you do have to make sure you have your referee, your USA
Yes.
Swimming referee, and your USA Swimming personnel, like your officials listed there. Make sure that they show up.
If it's a high school meet where you're going to have multiple club swimmers in it, what if someone from Club A requests it be observed and sends their $50, and someone from Club B doesn't know Club A's done it, and they also request?
Well, they should coordinate with the high school coach
Okay.
of the host team.
Yeah, the meet director or somebody, the referee or somebody who's involved in running that invitational or high school district meet should be the one responsible for turning that form in.
And then I'm assuming it's up to the high school to find an official to observe it,
Yep.
or is one of those assigned?
It should
So in
personally
order to
should be the high school.
So in order to be observed, the officials working the deck have to be dual certified. They have to be high school and USA Swimming registered.
Okay, so they need to
Need
make
four.
sure that they have the
Four.
Four, yes.
four.
Four.
One referee and 3 deck officials. Sir, did you have a question in the white shirt? Okay.
I was in Geneva last year.
Does the AO count as one of those 4?
No.
AOs are not
Deck
AOs are not required.
You can almost just put any 4 names you want on there. It's not like Gulf saying those 4 names have to be there. You just have to put 4 names on there. That's what we do. We put the same 4 on every meet. And those, not all those show up.
So it's a formality?
Here's an example.
my question, who will make sure that you will have for, is it the Gulf where you pay your $50 to, or who is taking?
Rick Kellenbach, so here's championship Form A, these are on the USA Swimming website. This is for our high school meet that we do at A&M. It's called the Bob Stallings Invitational. And you have
It does ask for a meet director.
So here you have to go through and check off all the boxes that you're going to use a timing system that's compliant with USA Swimming, that, the kids only wear one suit. I don't know, there's some of the rules that they want to make sure that you're following, USA Swimming rule, very specific rules. And then you'll get down to here where you're going to actually list which officials that you're going to have that are USA Swimming officials. And for them to work the deck at a high school meet, they have to be USA Swimming officials and UIL officials. So then you would send this to Rick Kellenbach. There's his email address. I think that's also on the next slide or two. He's going to send that to Susan Heath at USA Swimming. And then your kids will be able to get their times at the meet. So that's the Form A. That's for invitationals, and so it says here $50 must accompany. These are for non-season culminating meets. Okay, so we host also the region meet, Region 5. So this is Form B. It looks almost like the one in Form A. Once again, you have to go through all of the checklists. You have to show who your officials are going to be and then who your referee is going to be.
Let's scroll up. Does that one have to have a meet director?
No.
Okay, that one does not.
The forms are a little bit different, but Form B for region and high school UIL. I guess also if you do TAPS or any one of those, it doesn't require the $50 fee. Now the last thing I wanted to point out was you want to make sure that the kids' times count, right? And a lot of high school coaches don't understand the USA ID, how it's made, and they'll get that wrong. So if your high school or your facility is hosting an observed meet, one of these observed meets for high school, you really want to make sure that meet file gets sent to Lauren. Wave to Lauren back there. Just like when you're doing your own club invitational meet, and you want to make sure that all the kids entered in the meet are USA Swimming registered. What you want to do is send that file to Lauren, and Lauren's going to help you recon the high school kids who are club kids to get their IDs correctly in the file before the meet ever starts. You don't want to wait until after the meet is over, because then you're going to have to pay Rick Kellenbach $10 for every swim to get it corrected, because the ID didn't get corrected the first time. So this is kind of above and beyond what you would do for normal Gulf meets or your club hosted meets, but you almost have to treat these observed meets that you're doing for your high schools just like a club hosted meet. You really got to make sure that you're doing your best to sanction correctly and on time, and to also make sure that the IDs are entered correctly into the file before the meet ever starts. And unfortunately, I think some of us have learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Okay, didn't mean to steal your...
That's okay. So the last fee up there is a time trials. If you're going to run a time trials, it's a $50 fee no matter how many sessions of time trials you run. One $50 fee. All right, so the Gulf Swing meet schedule. You actually have a copy of the meet schedule for 18-19 with your papers. That shows all of the Gulf sponsored meets for the 2 seasons. Is it long course?
It's both.
Yes, for the 2 seasons. All right, so you have Gulf sponsored meets and you have club sponsored meets. Gulf sponsored meets, the formats and the dates are formulated by the TPC and approved by the House of Delegates. Club sponsored meets, the formats and entry fees are determined by each club host. There's a limitation. Is there a limitation on it? How many fee market total?
The only thing you can't do at club meet is on
On a champs meet weekend.
champs meet.
Right. So you can host a club-sponsored meet on any weekend except for golf championship meet dates. Okay? And then there's the 4-hour rule penalty that we talked about before. There's common rules for both types of meets, the sanctioning, reporting, fees, and the USA Swimming Code of Conduct. Those are similar for both. All right, so you have the schedule. Do we need to show it?
No.
Because you have a copy of the schedule. And it shows you in there how many hosts or venues there are for each meet. All right, so writing announcement. For Gulf-sponsored meets, you are using the templates that are provided by TPC. Fill in the information that is specific to your meet. So it'll come to you. You'll have highlighted areas in yellow that are specific for your venue and your team, etc. Those are the things that you should go in and change. Okay? If you're doing a club-sponsored meet, you should use a sample announcement that's on the Gulf Swimming website. And we've added language like, for example, the drone statement, the deck changing statements have been added in there. Remove language that does not pertain to your venue or your meet. Add appropriate names, dates, and locations. And be sure to include these pages. You must have an order of events. You must have qualifying and or cutoff times, a map and local information, parking, hotels, safety guidelines and warm-up procedures that can be found on the Gulf Swimming website. Entry forms for if people need to do hand entries, which I don't know if anybody does that anymore. And then an entry verification form. Those are all things that can be found on the Gulf Swimming website and should be included in your meet announcement. Okay? All right. Announcements must be received 8 weeks prior to. Yes, sir.
You said something about the drone statement. Was
Yes.
there any language about not videoing behind the lanes where parents are kind of?
There is an audio-video statement in there. There is. And that's been in there for a while. But yes. All right, so 8 weeks prior, it is due. Sanction application forms and fees must be received within 24 hours of the sanction due date. No, that wasn't okay. $100 fine for late submissions of announcements, sanction application forms, and fees. Sanction numbers will be issued only after the completed sanction application forms and fees have been received. If any changes, additions, corrections are to be made to the announcement after it has been sanctioned and posted, the technical chair and the sanction coordinator must approve it. Actually, the technical chair doesn't really approve any of those unless it's a change to format of a Gulf-sponsored meet. So you've sent in your application, your announcement, your fees. Everything's good. Everything checks out. The sanction coordinator approves it, issues a sanction number, sends it back to you, and posts it on the website. And then all of a sudden, you, let's see, Judy, you can't use your facility. Oh my gosh, SciFair says you cannot use your facility and you have to change your facility. You need to change your announcement, revise your announcement to whatever change is happening, and send it back to the sanction coordinator. It's nice if you put in your email what the change is and or highlight it in your meet announcement, so that all the sanction coordinator has to do is look for that specific change, okay? The sanction coordinator will then revise your sanction number. It's an R1 or an R2, or some we've had upwards of 3 or 4 revisions on announcements, okay? They will send it back to you and they will send it to the website, okay? But the sanction coordinator does not make those changes. Let's just say you have a personnel change or a start time change. You cannot email the sanction coordinator and say, hey, can you change this on my announcement? We don't do that. Okay, to me, that's a liability thing. If we put something wrong in there, then that's on us. You guys need to change it and send it back to the sanction coordinator. All right, all the credentials of all your personnel, including registration, will be checked. Your meet referee, your AO, your meet director, and your coaches, and your safety marshal. Safety marshal's not up there. Sanction announcements and HYV files will be posted on the Gulf webpage no later than 6 weeks prior to the meet. Okay, so what happens is 8 weeks out, you're sending the sanction coordinator all this stuff. Okay, so in our dream world, she goes and checks that, and everything's perfect, and we post everything, and you're golden. Now, let's say she goes and she checks some of your personnel, and they've got something that's expired. Basically, you have 2 weeks to get all that stuff fixed, okay? Because at 6 weeks, your announcement should be posted on the Gulf website, okay? For every day that it is not posted on the Gulf website, it is a $100 fine for every day. It's not a one-time thing, it's per day. And the maximum is $1,500, okay? It behooves you as a meet director to go ahead and check your personnel's certifications before you submit. That is the best practice, okay? It's not hard to do. You can ask them. You can check with your registrar on your team or your head coach, and they can check. It's not a hard thing to check, okay? But 2 weeks goes by really fast.
Can you self-check? Because you're saying it's not a hard thing to check, but yet you have to ask people. Can you self-check? Because that's easier.
You would have to check on they can check on their portal, right?
Yeah.
Your team's portal should have all of your personnel on your portal and their demos. So if you have access to your team's
You mean
portal on
like
USA
the-
Swimming.
The coaches and all their stuff is up to date.
It should have everybody that's registered as a
Whoever your
non-athlete.
administrator is on your club should have access to your team's portal when it shows all of that.
Okay.
Team unified?
No, this is.
No, this is on USA Swimming. Every team has a team portal, whether you have access to it or whether your team uses it or not.
Somebody on your team has that.
But somebody has a password and a login to that.
And the other thing here is the HYB files.
That's-
Not everyone has access to the software that actually imports those things. So it's important to talk to your team and see who actually has the software that can do that, because it's not.
As a meet director, though, you should know that. Because the meet directors, for a club-sponsored meet, you are sending the HYB files in.
Different teams
To
do
the-
different things.
Right.
Just know that different teams
Right.
handle it differently, so that's not always the case.
All right, so your application form is on the Gulf Swimming website under Meets homepage, Meet Directors Forms, and it says Application for Sanction Approval. So a few rules that, these are, I put together this slide with Darcy because this is the way that I wanted things done as sanction coordinator. Natalie Malinrick from Pearland is the new sanction coordinator. She might change the way she wants things. She's only been working with sanctions for a few weeks now. When I trained her, she didn't express that she wanted things done a different way, but we need to give her some time to work through all that. But your announcements need to be sent in Word, not in PDF. That's the email address, sanctions@gulfswimming.org. The sanction coordinator, after they approve the meet announcements, they will be the ones sending it to the website. Meet director, nobody else is allowed to send the announcements to the webmaster, only the sanctions coordinator.
Why Word and not PDF, just out of curiosity?
It's way easier to change. PDF is
Well, I know-
difficult to
I know-
edit.
I know the difference in how to edit them, but why would a team send the announcement sanction in Word when you're expecting the team to make sure it's correct anyway? So I would expect that.
Because they don't do it correct.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Okay, so you have to add a number to it. Okay,
Yes.
that's fair. That's
Yes. And especially with revisions and what have you, yes.
Gotcha.
You can edit in PDF. It's more difficult,
Yeah.
believe it or not. And
No,
when
I
you're in the
know.
heat of a season and you're trying to sanction 8 different meets.
No, I understand that.
So-
I was just not, I was putting the responsibility back on the team to edit their stuff, not on the safety coordinator.
Right.
But I do understand what you mean.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to be covered later or not, but if you send your announcement in for your sanction and you've got your file and all that, if there are a lot of changes in the file, does each change in the file require a new sanction or no?
In the file. Sanctions doesn't deal with files.
Okay, so.
Like, you're talking about HYV files?
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
as long as
sanctions
the-
doesn't deal with
Okay.
meet files.
Okay, so nothing about changes in the file affect the sanction on the invite?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But if there is a change to the HYV file, and it's already been posted, we really want to put an R1 next to it, or...
So if it's a club-sponsored meet and you have a change to your HYV file, the first thing you should do, you should be sending it out to who's coming to your meet. And the second one, you should send it to the webmaster. And yes, you should say this is a revision.
Okay.
And they can put an R1 next to that so people know looking at that there's a change. Okay, so when you send an email for your sanction, you should CC, is that true? They CC the TPC?
Not really.
I don't think you need to CC. TPC is not going to look at it. But definitely your meet referee should have that information, and definitely your AO, so that they know. I forget to send it to my meet referee all the time, and he's always asking me to send it, so I'm bad about that. All right, when you send in your Word meet announcement, we would appreciate if you would put in the title, when you're titling your file, that you would put the year. So it actually should be 2019 now, because we're actually entering in our 2019 registration year. Fun is the name of the team. So I would put 2019 Notch October open announcement. That would be the name of my file that I'm sending in. Okay, if you put it in this format and we have to go back and look for your announcement later on because of a revision or to look up something, it's so much easier to have it in this format. It's easier to find it in our storage file. Okay. If you're a club sponsored meet, use the sample announcement on the Gulf website. The reason it's important to keep your announcements all looking the same, it makes the sanction coordinator's job so much easier to proof that meet announcement. If you have things in different places, it really does throw us off. If we can always know that things are going to come in a certain order in a meet announcement, it makes it so much easier to proof. Okay, remove language that does not pertain. If you're using the sample announcement, add your stuff. We already went through all this. Okay. All right, try to include in your announcement the officials' attire, what they should be wearing. You might want to check with your meet referee to see what they're asking. Is it pretty much standard for like prelim final? Is it standard? Some officials don't want you to wear shorts at finals, so it's nice to check with your meet referee what they're. I just learned that this year, by the way, even though we wore shorts. But all right, so you want to add or change language for the following. This is for club-hosted meets when you're writing your own announcement. Think about your distance events. Are you going to alternate girls and boys? Positive check-in. How many you're going to have in finals? Those type of things. You can change that if you're doing a club-hosted meet. Are you combining age groups? Are they swimming together but scored separately? Relay cards. When do you want relay cards due? Do you want them to declare prelims and finals, or are they automatically swimming in finals? Number of heats swum in finals, things like that. Follow the approved meet formats. For Gulf sponsored meets, you won't be writing your own announcements. Those are sent in templates. Requests for exceptions to Gulf sponsored meet formats must be sent 90 days prior to the meet and must be approved by TPC. This hardly ever happens. I mean, I think the majority of the requests we have are if, let's say your facility won't let you in before a certain time and you have to start your meet later, things like that. That happens at Spring Branch a lot, I think. But so you must send a request in to TPC so that they can approve it. Use the age. The other thing is change of weekends. We've had that recently where a team that's supposed to host a meet, like a Gulf sponsored meet, and they can't get the venue on the weekend that they're supposed to have the meet. That's really important. I think that has to go before the board. Right?
Yeah, that creates a big problem.
Big problem, yeah.
Because if it's a multi-venue meet, then all of a sudden the kids' ages change, right? Because the rule in USA Swimming is the swimmer's age is the first day of the meet. If you move your meet a week later, all of a sudden all of those kids' ages, well, some of them might have changed because the birthday is in between the two weekends. So asking to change weekends when you're hosting a Gulf multi-venue meet is not possible.
Well, and just dividing the teams out too. You have one meet this weekend, one venue, and then 5 venues this weekend. It makes it really difficult. So at 90 days, that's 3 months out. You should know. You should have your contract in hand for renting your facility. Use the age groups listed. Remember, there's a difference between 9 and 10s and 10 and unders. 9 and 10s are only 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds. 10 years old can be anybody 10 years old and younger. You have a 5-year-old in that event. Okay? 15 and over versus senior. 15 and over, 15 years old and older. Senior would be anybody. It's an open age group as long as they qualify, if there are qualifying standards. All scheduled meets must be scored using USA Swimming scoring procedures. Make sure you check your meet manager file. Sometimes they are not set up correctly. I know I ran a championship meet one time and the scoring was not set up correctly and we had to go back in and rescore everything. Thank goodness we did that before we handed out trophies. When you're submitting an announcement for sanctioning, I already said this, send it in Word, get your meet referee's input. The one thing, it makes it really difficult. Like some people use a header on their announcements, and that's where they have the sanction number to be input. So that means that's an extra step for your sanction coordinator because I got to go in and edit the header instead of just typing it in. So don't put your sanction number place in the header. Okay, it needs to be just one place on there. Personnel. When we're checking personnel, the names that you put on your announcement should match whatever they are registered in SWIMS. So if the person's name is, I don't know, Robert Smith, and you put Bobby Smith, they're not going to show up. When we type the name in SWIMS, it's not going to show up as Bobby Smith. Okay, now I've been doing this for 3 years, so I remember what people's names really are, but Natalie doesn't know people. So it's really going to help this first year or so if you put whatever name they are registered in SWIMS. So like Linda, you have a hyphenated name now, right? I didn't know that when I first started seeing your name. I was like, oh my God, I can't find her. And then I finally figured it out. So simple things like that, hyphenated last names, people that go by their middle name, but they're really registered with their first name. It makes it a lot more difficult for us to find those people. We talked about certifications. So once again, their expiration has to be on the last day of the meet or later. If their expiration date is in the middle of your meet, they are not eligible to be on your announcement. Okay? And it's not a date when the sanction application packet is due. It is when your meet is happening. Okay? List only the essential names on your meet announcement. If you're going to have 14 safety marshals work your meet, but you're going to have 2 of them that are kind of your head safety marshals and they're going to be there all the time, put only 2 there. You don't have to list 14 people. Okay? I'm serious. I've checked meet announcements that I've had to check 20 names. It takes a long time because I have to go to several different places to check. Meet referees, I have to go to 2 different places. Meet directors, I have to go to 2 different places. And it's some typing in there for stuff. So list only the people you have to list on your form. Only your head coach. If he's going to be there the entire time, only put your head coach on there. Okay? The personnel listed on the meet announcement must be present at the meet for the sessions. If you're using 2 directors, both must be listed. So if you're going to have 2 meet directors there for the entire meet, both names should be on there.
Do they both have to sign, or can one sign? Because that's been a question.
Sign what?
Is it the announcement or the sanction form?
This is just for announcements.
Whichever one the meet director has to sign.
That's the application.
The application form.
So just one is fine.
Just one is fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, things change. Things change. We talked about this last year about emergencies. Okay, and we talked about being flexible as a sanction coordinator, and we definitely are. Your meet personnel can change. Facility issues and venue changes, we talked about that. Session start times may change. Sometimes I know at A&M, they've had to change to later because of the college team is practicing. Sometimes we have to go earlier because we have to be out of the facility earlier for whatever reason. Or the meet's going to run really super long if we don't start at 8:30 instead of 9 o'clock. And meet formats. Meet formats don't always change, but sometimes. So revisions must be initiated by the host team. And again, sanction coordinator cannot make changes to your announcement. You must make those, okay? Let's see what's next. Okay, so going back to this. We talked about last year about being flexible. Some people were concerned about what if my meet referee has an emergency and we find out on Friday morning and the meet starts Friday night. What happens? Okay, you're going to send me a revision. I may not get it posted. That's probably not going to get posted on the website, but at least send me the revision so I have it in writing that you had a change in your personnel. Okay, that makes sense? Okay. Just because it's that 6 weeks out thing, that doesn't matter at that point. All right, announcements should be revised by the meet director and sent to the sanction coordinator. Double check the version that you are using. So when the sanction coordinator sanctions an announcement and we send it back to you, we're going to send it back to you in Word and in PDF, because we're also going to send PDF to the website. Make sure, what we do at the end of your file, so you've typed in 2019 Notch October open announcement. When we sanction it, at the end of that title, Natalie's going to put her initials and the date. So I don't know what her initials, mine was KPS 091018. So I know what version that is. That was the latest version that I sent back to you to be sanctioned. When you send it back to me for a revision, that's exactly what I want to see in the title. If I didn't see the initials or the date, then I know we're not working with the same version of the announcement. So make sure you send back the last version that I sent to you or that Natalie sent to you to be sanctioned. And that way we know we're working off the latest version of your announcement. So don't go change the title of that when we send it back to you. Okay? And then it helps to highlight the changes within your announcement. We'll highlight it, we'll unhighlight it, but it just helps to see exactly where your changes are. All right, this is you.
So we're supposed to take a break. Should we take a break?
Oh yeah, we are supposed to. You might need a break.
Or power through?
That's 3:45.
Power through. All right. If you got to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom.
I would just go and let people go to the bathroom as they need to.
Okay. So renting golf equipment. How many teams here rent golf equipment? We got? Yeah. So there's a process for renting golf equipment, and if you go down to in College Station, we had a place called You Rent 'Em, for whatever you need, some stuff to cut up concrete or big tools that you don't want to buy. I mean, think about it that way, right? They expect to get their equipment back in a working order, and that's exactly, there's a process for renting it out, filling out forms, and when you return your equipment, they expect that the return equipment forms are filled out and that the equipment is in a good working order when they get it back, and if you violate any of those procedures, you get fined, right? They take something off your credit card. So it's sort of the same way here. There's a process for renting golf timing equipment. All right, you've got to contact the golf equipment coordinator, which is Eddie Adams. There's a fee associated with it of $100. You pay for that through the Gulf website on Gulf Pay. It's a credit card. It's a credit card payment. And like what I do with the sanction coordinator is I will forward them the email, because what happens is when you get on Gulf Pay and you pay your $100 for your sanction or $100 for your equipment, you'll get an email statement back. You forward that on to the Gulf equipment coordinator saying, look, I paid my $100. Here's my request for Gulf equipment. It's important to get that Gulf equipment request in as soon as possible. Technical Planning Committee, when they look at awarding meet bids, they know certain teams, based on how the application forms, the bid forms are turned in, which ones are going to rent golf equipment. We have three trailers or 4 trailers? Anybody know? Three. We have 3 trailers. So I'm not sure if we've ever had the situation where there have been 4 teams on the same weekend who needed the equipment, but it could happen because on golf open meet weekends, a club hosting a club-sponsored meet may need the equipment. So it's really important that if you know you're going to need a golf trailer, golf equipment, you've got to get that application in to the equipment coordinator as soon as you know you're going to need it. Yes?
How often does the equipment update, like fix maintenance?
Well, I mean, of course, every time it comes back, if there's something broken, it gets replaced. And I know, no, it's supposed to. Yeah.
It's like, the field needs speakers not working. There were 2 speakers, none of them are working. Wires are like, can't use it at all.
Do you know which meets it was?
Yes.
And you need to, could you send a note to Eddie telling him that this is a problem? The meet host should have taken care of that. So that's the situation, or maybe our fines aren't big enough. That if there is equipment that's broken and it's not getting reported, that we need to, or missing. Yeah. So the Gulf equipment situation is really kind of a gift. If you think about the thousands of dollars of equipment that's in that trailer, with the console, the deck harness, the touch pads, the buttons, the starter boxes, you're talking about $20,000, maybe even more worth of equipment. And the fact that it only costs you so much to rent it per day is really quite inexpensive. And back in the day, when I was first in the LSC, a lot of teams needed that Gulf trailer, but now we've gotten to the point where most of us use the facilities equipment that we rent for the pool. So the need for the trailers is becoming a situation where we keep thinking every year, do we really need to keep doing this? Do we really need to keep doing this? Because it is a huge expense.
Which is probably why, I mean, when you're talking back in the day, there was, about this time of the year, there was a weekend where they brought all the trailers to one spot.
Yeah.
And did major maintenance and overhaul.
Right.
To make sure that the start of the short course season, everything was in working order. And I don't think we've done that in about 6 years.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody who really needs Gulf equipment, you really need to get involved in making sure that it's properly maintained. Get a parent involved or yourself to get over there and help out with whoever's hosting the trailers. Talk to Eddie about it and so on. Because as we're moving, like what we did with Ag and Swim Club is when we're at A&M, we use A&M's equipment. It's part of the contract. But when we host our meets at our other pools in town, we own our own equipment. Every year one year we bought a starter box, and then the next year we bought a deck harness and buttons, and then the next year, we bought some touch pads and so on. And so you as a team can do the same thing. But if you're renting the equipment, you need to make sure you turn in the application. You pick it up 1 to 2 days prior. It must be back to the trailer host by 3 p.m. the following day of the meet. Late charges are $75 a day. If something comes up and you can't get there, you say, hey, look, I'm going out of town, but I'll be back on Tuesday or whatever. You've got to talk about that with the trailer host or with the equipment coordinator beforehand and not after the fact. So if you own your own equipment for swim meets or you use high school's equipment, just like what's happening sometimes with these Gulf trailers, and nobody's paying attention to whether stuff is working or not, it gets thrown in a closet and you're not sure if it's working or not until the next round of swim meets. That's the wrong time to figure that out, right? That can create a huge timing system problems during a swim meet are the biggest headache because you've already got the meet going. Anytime you break the momentum of the swim meet, whether it's a personnel issue or it has to do with the equipment, everybody's like, ugh. People wander off, the timers wander off, the officials wander off, and then you can't get that thing started again. I hate the 10-minute break at high school swim meet. That is just the worst. If you have no diving and everybody disappears, you can't get them back. So you really got to make sure that you inventory your equipment. Some of us, we all have to have, like computers, printers, and things like that. But I kind of have a list. I have a list going here. Computers and printers and network cables and all of that. You got to make sure that it's all, ready and working correctly before the meet ever starts. Do you remember when Microsoft came out with the statement that Windows 10 would update behind the scenes and we never know when it was going through updates? That was the promise of Microsoft, is that like a Mac, it would do updates behind the scenes, or we may have to restart the computer every once in a while. But if you've had a PC lately and it has gone through updates, those updates can come on at the absolute wrong time. And if it's happening when you first start a swim meet, where you open the computer for the first time in months, and it needs to go through all of those updates, you're in trouble, right? So you really want to make, what I always do before, because at A&M we have computers everywhere, right? On the deck in various locations, in the scoring room, and they're all working together. We can't afford to have computers going through updates in the middle of the swim meet. There's two ways to tackle that problem. One is to make sure that you're doing your updates before the meet ever starts. So you got to open up the laptops, put them on the kitchen table, and just let them sit there for like 24 hours. These are computers that you haven't turned on in several months, because it'll show when you first turn it on that no updates are required. But some amount of time is going to go by, and then it's going to say, oh yeah, you do need to do updates. And it's going to start at 9 o'clock in the morning, right at the start of your swimming. So you got to make sure. The other way is to go deep inside the computer and to turn off the updater. If anybody wants to know how to do that, I can send you the instructions for that. So I turn off the updater, because I've gotten burned with updates in the middle of swimming. Printers, when printers sit on the shelf for a while, the motors get worn out, and the grease kind of slips out of them, especially if you've stored them in a place that's a little bit warm. The lubricant leaks out of the motors, and you go to turn it on for the first time, and it makes a big squealing noise, and then that's it. So make sure you got your printers working, your network cables. If they're under the pool and you expect them to work, 6 months later you could be in big trouble, right? Water wicks into things, it causes things to corrode. Make sure all of that is working. I think that too many people have gotten burned with the Meet Manager software trying to run it over a wireless network. I do not recommend that you ever run Meet Manager in the multi-user mode through wireless. You may say, oh, I've never had a problem. But the people who have had problems have had situations where the file gets so corrupted that they have to send it back to high tech to get it fixed. And that's not a good thing to happen in the middle of your swimming. So I do not recommend a wireless network. Wireless network for getting on the internet, things like that is fine. But as far as running the computers linked together in the Meet Manager mode, you should really use a hardwire. So check your network cables, your router, make sure everything is working correctly before the swim meet ever starts up. Your timing system equipment, it's always a good idea, if you have an inter squad or something, to just set it all up and run it and see how it's doing. Lap counters, they're always missing numbers, or the screws have fallen out. Just make sure that those are in good working order. I got into the habit of just replacing the watch batteries, not even waiting until they die. Watch batteries are pretty cheap. Lap bell, make sure your lap bell is working pretty well. We have a problem where the clanger, what is that thing in the middle, always falls off. There's a name for that. If you have a scoreboard and you haven't turned it on in a while, let's get it fired up and make sure that it's working correctly. Get Colorado or High Tech out there, or Daktronics, to look at it if it's not working correctly. Make sure your remote strobe is working correctly, your PA system, you got all your supplies and everything ready to go. If you start thinking about these things 6 weeks, 8 weeks out, you're not going to be in such a panic when the meet comes up. All right, and some of these things take a while to order. You have to get things fixed.
And other thing too, some teams are not the owners of a lot of this stuff, so you have to work with the facility that you're using to make sure that they're checking some of these things.
And you got to kind of keep on them.
Well, then there's that.
Yeah. Hey, the scoreboard, we know it's not working. We got a swim meet coming up. When's that going to be fixed?
Yep, okay, it's correct. When are you going to do that?
It's nothing worse than running a swim meet without a scoreboard, right? Because that shows what's going on in the meet. Think about the equipment. Think about which pieces of the equipment can make the meet come to a complete stop or cause all kinds of heartache. I call it the train wreck. You only brought one computer and it quits. That's a bad place to be. You brought only one printer and it quits. That's a bad place to be. You know that cable, the data cable that connects from the computer to the console? Can't find it in the box. Where did it go? That's a bad one to have. When you can't get the data off the console and into the computer, you have to type it all in by hand. Your timing system fails and you only have the minimum number of stopwatches. Now you're in a bad situation. All right? You need to have more stopwatches than you need. Having only the minimum number of timing system components for championship meet, like touchpads, consoles, backup buttons, cables, etc. And I've seen this happen at swim meets where all of a sudden lane one, the touchpad just quits, but the facility doesn't change it out because they don't have any more pads. So when your kid swims in lane one, they don't get a pad time, you got to go to the backup button or the stopwatch. That's a terrible thing to do to the kids. So you got to really make sure that your equipment, you have enough pieces to replace things in this. Now there's situations where things happen, right? Pushing the touchpads out that day, the cart falls over, half the touchpads get destroyed. We've done that, so those things happen, right? But you can't plan for those kinds of disasters, right? So moving on to the timeline, I think we're talking about ordering awards now. So all meets are to have awards for swimmers except for senior non-champ meets. The minimum award level for ribbons, this is for Gulf sponsored meets. Now, your invitationals, if you don't want to hand out awards, that's your business, okay? But if you want to keep attracting kids to your meets, you know, I think sometimes doing these club-hosted meets, you've got to do a little bit more than what Gulf meets do. Well, when we first started doing our high school invitational meet, we really didn't have the turnout that we had hoped, and so we started increasing the level of the award in terms of its detail and so on, and the kids really like them. They walk out of the facility wearing them. Remember, the awards are there to inspire and to award the kids for a job well done. It also helps advertise that you care about the kids and that teams are going to come back to your club-hosted or high school-hosted meet in the following year. Gulf Championship meets require that you order from Hasty Awards. The first, second, and third place team awards are given to you at no cost if you advertise in your meet program.
And send it to them proving you did.
Yes, so they're going to want a copy of it. So if you're doing you're not handing out programs at the meet, then I guess you don't get that benefit.
No, you can send it what you put online.
Oh, post it online,
Yes.
like with the timeline or something?
We included an ad in our heat sheet that we put online, and we just sent them that file.
Okay, so they were happy with that. Okay, so they want you to advertise for the company. If you're going to do individual high points, like 10 and under high point, whatever, you're going to have to order those separately. And you actually have a choice of what kind of an award that you want to hand out to the kids. But let's make sure it's an award, all right, and something that the kids can really appreciate, all right? Not like a piece of candy or something. I think that's a little bit too generic. But something that gets the kids excited that they actually want a high point and maybe second or third place. So this is the one from last year. I did this. I have been doing this for 15 years or whatever. I think Darcy is now taking it over. But there's a little calculator that looks at which meets we have in terms of championship meets and how many different events there are, how many first place medals, second place medals, how many ribbons, and so on. So this gets sent to Hasty Awards, and they know if you're hosting one of these meets that you're going to need, 82 gold medals or whatever. If you look at this down up here at the end, last year we ordered 8,500 medals from Hasty Awards and 14,600 ribbons. So Hasty Awards should give you your first, second, and third place trophies for free. They are making a lot of money off of Gulf Swimming.
Does that allow for ties?
This does not allow for ties, yes. So it's up to you how you want to handle that. You can always order some extra medals ahead of time, or you can then order the extra medals or team trophies, whatever, after there's ties, or if there's ties, and then send them to the coach after the meet, okay? I always like to order a couple extra of each, just in case they get broken or whatever. Okay, now we're moving on to the Meet Manager software. The software of Meet Manager is now Meet Manager 7.0. I would suggest that you buy it or download it or whatever, because my understanding is Meet Managers, they do an improvement every 2 years. My understanding with Meet Manager 6 is that it'll no longer allow you to push the Meet Mobile. So if you want to use Meet Mobile for your meets and you think you're going to run your meet with Meet Manager 6, you're not going to be able to put anything on Meet Mobile. All right? I haven't tried it. I don't know if that's really the case, but I read that when I was downloading the software to my computer.
Is your license still valid?
Yeah.
Just an update?
Yeah. If you're doing a club-sponsored meet, there's no reason why you can't use touchpad. Could use touchpad. But for Gulf-sponsored meets, we want you to use the Meet Manager software. It would be best if you registered your meets with Meet Mobile. I think a lot of parents and kids use that software to check, to look at where the meet is and what their times are. A lot of times mistakes with their times will show up in Meet Mobile. It'll allow you to get to the admin table and get that corrected at the day of the meet. Okay, so if you want to put time standards in your Meet file, in your Meet Manager file to show in your results and all of that, the time standards are updated on the Gulf website and can be pulled off of there annually. So the Meet Manager software is basically an emulation of your meet announcement. So I get this question a lot, or I've gotten it in the past, is what's correct? The fact that we screwed up the meet file, or the fact that we screwed up the meet announcement? Well, the meet announcement is your Bible. That is the rules of the meet. So if there's anything wrong in the meet announcement, we messed up in the meet announcement. The meet file is supposed to be a copy of the meet announcement. So if we're off in an event order, or the event got switched, or it's going in the wrong direction or something like that, it has to emulate exactly what the meet announcement is. So it's very important for you when you're reading your meet announcement, whether it's a Gulf sponsored meet or it's definitely your club hosted meet, you got to make sure that, first of all, that meet announcement, it gets transferred into that meet file and it's done as correct as possible. Okay, days of the meet, age up days, how much you're charging per entry, swimmer surcharge fees, when does the meet start in the session report, all that kind of stuff. The heat interval, the scoring in terms of first place through either 8th place or first place out to 16th place, depending on your the meet that you're hosting. You know, when you're generating ribbons for the awards, are we awarding out to first place or third place, or are we awarding out to 8th place? Okay, because it can depend on the type of meet that you have. Check the details. So the Gulf is creating the HYV files for the Gulf sponsored meets. However, when that file gets created, it doesn't mean that you can't download it to your Team Manager or Team Unify software and look at it. Okay? They make mistakes. All right? We all make mistakes. Right? Let's not wait until the coaches have turned in their entries to find out that the event order is wrong, or that we put in the wrong entry fee, or there's something that's, you know, the 200 backstroke is in there twice by mistake, and one of them should be 100 backstroke. It's a good idea, no matter if you're doing a Gulf sponsored meet, and certainly if you're doing your own club sponsored meet, you got to check the HYV file by pulling it into Team Manager, Team Unify, and using that as a way of problem solving. So much easier to do that before you send it off to your teams that are coming for your invitational.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it typically the AO that does all of this?
Yes, yes, the AO, you're right, your AO should do that, and you as the meet director should make sure that they're actually doing that. Once it shows up on the Gulf website, you need to be the first team to download that to your team manager or Team Unified software and really make sure that everything is set up correctly. If there's a mistake, let the technical planning team know that there's a mistake and go get it corrected and get it revised. Get the wrong one off. So the people that work at your meet and are behind the computer running the meet manager software really need to, they need to know some basic tools, right? And not all people know everything when they first show up or in their first meet. There's a learning curve. So if you have someone who works with the AO who's helping at the scoring table, get them to train new parents so that they can learn the software. It's not, the meet manager software is probably a decade behind in terms of its visual appearance and the way it kind of works with the modern thinking of web pages and software and things like that. But it's a database written program, and from what I understand in talking to the inventors, they would have to rewrite the entire software package in order to make the panel that we all look at be a little bit more modern in the way that it works. And so we're kind of stuck with the way it looks, and it's not necessarily intuitive with what files and what things are called and all of that. So it does take sometimes a certain amount of perseverance and training to get behind the computer and find out where things are and all of that. So some basic things that people should know, and depending on whether it's a championship meet or a time finals or an open meet, these things can be different. Printing reports, psych sheets, meet programs, session reports, athlete reports. That's something that people who are good with the meet manager should know how to do at a whim. How to add an athlete to a heat and lane, right? How to move an athlete that swam in the wrong heat and lane, right? How to use the scratch pad and seating functions. How to create swim-off events, how to create events for split times. This is stuff that your AO, when they go through AO training, should, after they've come out of that, should know how to do all these things. But they can't be there for everything, and so it's important that who else is helping them on your staff can do all of these different things. So 3 weeks prior to the meet, 2 weeks after the conclusion of the meet, this is kind of the time frame that we're looking at here. You're going to receive and process your entries. You're going to do the swimmer reconciliation. So the technical planning committee, when you're doing if you're part of a multi-venue Gulf sponsored meet, they're not going to check the athletes in the file to make sure that they are USA Swimming registered. When they split it all up and they send you your teams for your meet, now you have the responsibility to make sure that all of the kids are actually USA Swimming registered. So you need to create a backup of that, send it to Lauren so she can run it through the SWIMS database, and then she'll tell you who isn't registered or the spelling names that need to be fixed or anything like that. I guess Lauren, you contact the teams who don't have a swimmer who was registered, right? And you will tell the host if they don't get it cleared up by the time of the meet, because they're not supposed to swim in the meet. It's a USA Swimming rule violation to swim in a meet when you're not USA Swimming registered. It's $100 per swimmer, correct? That Gulf fines. Also, it violates your USA Swimming insurance. So if the swimmer were to get hurt during the course of the meet, then it's a problem for you because you allowed a non-USA Swimming swimmer to compete, non-registered swimmer to swim in your meet. Lauren will send you back the RE1 file, which your admin official should know how to run the RE1 file through the meet manager database to make sure that those swimmers are currently registered. Let's see. Okay. When you receive the entries, I know with these multi-venue meets, the template is generic, right? So what Mark was pointing out is they're going to have, by default, the $3.50 athlete swimmer surcharge built into it. But if you're a facility who has only one lane of warm-up, warm-down, you need to knock that down to $2. If you're a venue that has, 2 pools and has a warm-up, warm-down area, then that needs to be knocked up to $5. So you kind of have to check that. You also need to make sure that the title, are you guys changing the title of the meet so that it doesn't show up in?
It's gonna, no, the title of the meet is always gonna be
Okay.
the October opening.
So on that first
2018.
page of the setup page of Meet Manager, you want to go in there and make sure that your facility and the town and the zip code and all of that, the team name is in there. Because what happens if you've seen in Meet Mobile, when you have two teams who haven't changed that generic meet name, both of those meets are going to get merged into the one file on Meet Mobile. And it gets really confusing. So it's important to change that. Let's see. Yeah, you want to make sure that the Meet Manager file that you build is done with a stable computer and not one that it has issues with it where it might actually corrupt the file. And back up often. I know somebody who works with the fellow who writes the software for Meet Manager, the fellow who owns the company. He often is actually working at the scoring table at national meets for USA Swimming and Masters. He backs up after every heat. That shows you how confident he is in his software. Now, I can tell, I know a lot of you have gone the entire meet and not backed up at all, and just turned the computer off, and just, next time you turned the computer on, it came up and there were no issues. But that's a really, really bad practice. You really need to have a thumb drive in the side of the computer backing up constantly. Because if that computer were to die in the middle of the swim meet, how are you going to get that file off and get it onto the computer that is working? So backing up to the thumb drive where you can move files around is super, super important. That's during the meet. But it's important also as you're building your team entries, because what's going to happen is whether you're doing a invitational, a club-hosted meet, or a Gulf-sponsored meet, coaches are going to be bombarding you with updates up until the start of the meet. At some point, you're going to tell the coaches, enough. I'm not taking any more entries. You're going to have to just on deck enter at the meet. As you're going through all of that and you're taking in new entries, you really got to keep backing up. Every time you do something or you change the file, back it up. Back it up. Even have a record. The Meet Manager, when you do a backup, it allows you to put in some notes and things like that. I keep a record off to the side of what I just did, so that if I made a mistake or something happened along the way, I knew at what part I did the backup, so I can go backwards and use that version of the file. So it's super important to keep backing up. When you bring in teams entries, if you have a team like Katie Aquatics, who has a zillion kids, but they didn't enter any relays, that's kind of I bet the coach made a mistake. I bet the coach forgot to enter the relays, right? That happens. So ask the team. If you get a team with no entries in relays or in certain events, a lot of times they've skipped over it by mistake, and that you can catch that ahead of time rather than having to deal with it at the meet. A great way to look at mistakes that are made with entries is you look at the first and last place of an event. So you generate the site sheet for, let's say, the 200 freestyle. First place is entered at 33 seconds. Okay, so that doesn't make any sense. So most likely, if you look at the event before it or the event after it, you'll see that it's the 50 backstroke. So the coach made a mistake, somehow hand entered in the time instead of pulled it out of their team manager, Team Unified. It tells you right there that there's a mistake. Contact the coach that they have a strange entry time and get it fixed before the meet starts. Look at the last entry in a site sheet column. Let's say it's a championship meet where no times or no time entries aren't allowed, and you see no times at the end. You got a problem. You got to make sure that you either remove that kid because the kid really doesn't have time. Sometimes weird things happen where the kid had time, but for whatever reason it pulls it out of the database as no time and puts it in there. Once again, it could be the 50 backstroke, the kid is entered at a 212. Probably should have been entered in the 200 freestyle. All right? So looking at first and last place in a site sheet column format really helps identify a lot of problems. When coaches do send you entries or you're corresponding back with them, make sure you send them a confirmation email back that you received. You're looking at it, everything looks good. You know, tell them, okay, I got 68 kids, 450 entries, individual entries, 12 relays, and so on. And the coaches appreciate that to make sure that it didn't corrupt them along the way. Generate team list reports and keep track of missing teams. That only, of course, corresponds to your club-hosted meets or invitationals. But if you're doing a single-host meet like Aggie Swim Club does age group champs, I'll have a list of the teams that entered the meet last year. And then I'll just look as the entries come in. If I see a team that didn't enter, that was entered in the meet last year, I'll contact the coach and say, hey coach, entries are coming in. I haven't gotten yours. Did you forget to send it to me? And then a lot of times it's like, oh my God, I thought my assistant coach did it. Right? They always blame the assistant coach. So.
Henry, I really hate to interrupt you, but we have to be out of the room by 5 o'clock, and we have a lot of slides left.
All right.
We're going to have to speed through these.
Let's see. All right, so it's important when you've gotten your meet file built up before the meet starts to make sure that you send a backup copy of that off to Lauren Fishbach. She'll run it, make sure that the kids are USA registered and so on. She'll work with you on who aren't. Same thing after the meet is over. Really need to make sure that that same meet file gets sent to Lauren after the meet, before things get uploaded into the swims, because you're going to have on-deck entries. Let's see, unattached swimmers, or let's see, they require or unattached teams require the undash and then the affiliation. So if it was Aggie Swim Club, it would be undash AGS. That's the new method that we've gone to, our acronym series that we've gone to. It's no longer UAGS, it's UN-AGS, okay? So reconciliation, we've kind of gone through this. By the Monday before the start of your meet, you need to have your timeline and your warm-up schedule and your timing assignment schedule published on the Gulf website. It used to be Wednesday, and I think a lot of people still think it's Wednesday, but it's not Wednesday. It's Monday. We really, really need it to be up there on Monday. There's a rule, there's a penalty associated with that if you don't get it put up there. Send it to the Gulf webmaster, include Lauren on that.
That's for any meet or Gulf sponsored? Any meet.
Any meet that's on the Gulf website. In determining a warm-up schedule, you really need to look at how many kids you have in your meet. Sometimes a single warm-up will work. Sometimes you need to have a split warm-up in terms of 2 sessions. Sometimes you need to go to 3. All right. Generally, with the size of the meets that we've designed through technical planning, 3 warm-ups would be the most. But it's kind of a rule of thumb of 12 athletes per lane for 25 yards and 25 athletes per lane for long course. That's kind of where it gets to the point where it can be unsafe of having too many kids in the lane and the kids are going to get hurt. And they're not getting a good warm-up in.
Make sure you look at entries Saturday and Sunday, because some teams don't attend as heavy on Sundays. And those numbers will be way different. If you just keep it the same for the entire meet, then your warm-ups or your lanes are going to be uneven. Your admin officials should know how to run the reports to look at Saturday versus Sunday versus just the numbers for the entire meet.
when determining the timing assignments, make sure that it's based on the team size of that session, once again, just like for the warm-up schedules. Let's see, meet timeline, now we're on the Monday before the meet, we're up to the meet. Coaches and officials, making sure that you should be getting a file from Eddie Adams that's showing the USA Swimming registered non-athletes, whether they're coaches, officials, or other, which would be meet directors and that, of who's on the naughty list and who's on the okay list. If they're on the deck, they shouldn't be on the deck, and you need to make sure that they're removed. If they're working on the deck, your referee will know what the officials are, or who the officials are that have expired their certifications, and they won't let them on. But you as the host really need to make sure, working with the referee, that if you have coaches who show up who are not certified, they really need to be removed from the deck. Timelines we typically use for flyover meets, 20 seconds with 15-second backstroke adder. Chase intervals we usually use a second, 0-second heat interval. For your club hosted meets and invitationals, you can set whatever time intervals that you want. But when you generate the timeline for determining whether or not you violated the 4-hour rule, you need to show it with these 20-second with 15 backstroke adder or 0-second. In the program, you also want to list the teams that are participating, of course, the warm-up schedules and lane timing assignments. If you're doing an electronic version of that, make sure that these things are on the Gulf website. Also there at the facility, it's always good to have paper copies for the coaches so that they know, because let's say that their phone isn't working or something, or they don't have a smartphone and they forgot to copy off when what the timeline looks like or what the warm-up schedule is. It's always important if you're doing electronic copies of the meet program to have some paper copies for the coaches. Anything else that we would put in the program, like qualifying times and time standards, all that's good to have in your meet program. Name of the referee and other key people. Advertisements, meet evaluation form, safety information. If you're going to print programs for the meet, kind of a rule of thumb is 70% of the total swimmers, and keep about 50 or so for coaches and officials and meet operations. Is this you?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. On the day of the meet, be visible. Everybody needs to know who the meet director is at the meet. Be accessible, not only for people attending your meet, but also for your volunteers. You're the volunteer manager and the meet director. You're the problem solver. All your volunteers doing their job. Do they understand their job? Make sure you review the safety procedures. Walk the deck with the head safety marshal. Make sure they know where things like the first aid kit are, what the lifeguard's responsibilities are, etc. All the forms for emergency, and what are your weather considerations. During warm-up, you can help by handing out relay cards or announce when they're due back, announce the closing of the deck when entries are due, or the closing of the deck entries, posting heat sheets, print lane timer sheets, any other reports requested by the referee. Ask your referee how many reports they want and how they want it formatted. Some of them want single column, some want double column. Ask them how many copies of each that they want. Every referee is different. 15 minutes until the meet starts, check on these activities. Clear the competition pool, the warm-up pool's open, call for timers, put out clipboards and watches, test the timing system. And then 5 minutes till the meet starts, call for the first events, play the national anthem. Again, you may have people helping you with this. It may not be all on you. During the meet, you may collect relay cards, collect lane timer sheets, although those are usually runners that are doing that kind of stuff. If there's any malfunctions, make sure you alert the AO and your meet referee probably. Print and post results. Make sure you do splits in your results and time standards. Those are always helpful to parents and coaches. All right, so after the meet, we're going to do what happens after the meet. Your meet results, you should be printing in standard publication order. That goes girls first, ages low to high, and then boys. And then have a backup of the meet manager MDB file. The PDF format of the results should include the team information page, any individual or team scoring, and the results. 2 columns per page. And then you should click in there. There's places you can click all this in Meet Manager, but you want all your no-shows, your DQs, and your scratches. They must be emailed to the to Lauren. 3 days after the conclusion of the meet, so by Wednesday. And then once they're cleared by the LSC, they can be sent to the webmaster. So Lauren gets those within 3 days. And then Lauren, do you email those or do you send them back to the host?
I sent them to the webmaster.
Okay, so Lauren will email to the webmaster the results file. And then the fine for submitting results is $100. The meet director is also responsible for completing these 2 forms within 2 weeks. So you have 2 weeks to do your financials, okay? The meet summary report, the TPC gets the meet summary report, and that you also have to print the team report. That is the report that tells what teams attended, how many swimmers they had, etc. And then the meet evaluation forms, if you received any, they go to that address. And then the NTV coordinator, which is Rick Kallenbach, he needs to receive the results file as well so that he can load them into the SWIMS database. So they go to the webmaster and to Rick Kallenbach at those email addresses. Yes. Sorry.
Everything comes through me and then goes to the webmaster and Rick.
The results.
Yes.
Okay. You send them?
I send them.
Okay. Sorry. Lauren sends them to all those people, so you don't have to do that. Sorry. The meet director is responsible for completing the following reports also within 2 weeks. So these are your financials. All right, so this goes to Tom Haas, who's the comptroller. So you're going to get the financial report, and that includes your splash fee check. So it's a nice little grid that you calculate everything on. And that you also have to give the team report for that. And then you also have to have the new rebate report. He gets very upset when you don't send that in. So meet directors, before your meet referee leaves the facility, get your officials rebate form, okay? Sorry, that's for Gulf sponsored meets only. So it looks like that. All right, championship meets. If you host a championship meet, not only do you have to do all of those things, but you need to type out a little summary. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but it does have to contain your team and High Point Award scores and winners, and they should be given to the publicity coordinator. Yeah, if there's any record breakers or any other big highlights at your meet. So just a little summary that you have to submit as well. All right, so resources. Of course, your notes here. We mentioned USA Swimming has a lot of resources for meet directors, and also Gulf Swimming has all of those things on there. Our website has a lot of things for meet directors. You can also, please feel free to contact any experienced meet director. I've been a meet director for 10 years. You're more than welcome to call or text or email me with any questions. I'm always available to help. And I'm sure any other experienced meet director would be able to help you as well with anything. And thank you so much for volunteering. We appreciate you. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. The errors were corrected. Most of the errors were corrected and are in red. In here, yes, we do post this on the website. No, I think it can be emailed to you.
What, this presentation?
She said they're going to get a correction.
They get it posted on the website.
We usually get it posted.
Yes, it's posted on the website.
It has to be because the people that didn't see it.
Yeah, last year.
No, they're sent that. They have to watch the video. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any requirement for running lifeguards on deck?
Nope. That's up to your
So you
facility.
you can go without lifeguards.
It's up to your, like, I don't have to have lifeguards in my pool, but I do.
They never have lifeguards.
Right.
They don't have it.
It's up to your facility, so they don't require you don't have to but I think it's impressive. I always have one. No, excuse me, new meet directors. If you're a new meet director, you need to email. Am I correct on this, Lauren? Lauren. The new meet directors, do they need to request the test or do you automatically send it to them?
That's going to all come from Darcy. I've got the finance.
So it will be emailed to them? New meet directors will be emailed their test.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that for everybody?
With new meet directors. You're renewing, right? Yeah, so you just had to attend.